my dog.
I just turned this on.
I don't know if they had it when I was there. Must have been later.
Yeah, there. She always, I didn't know her that well. She always seemed to be a pleasant person to me.
Please enter your participant or moderator code, followed by the pound key. Please say your name, followed by the pound key. You are the first participant in the conference.
Did you print these for us, Carla?
I
or
sure
they
did.
Come from, okay, thank you.
Yeah, nice big print, so read it.
Wanted you to be able to see it.
It's awesome.
Mine are that big too, just so you know.
Did you see those snowflakes this morning? My gosh, they were huge.
There was enough slush on the mill road that I started to hydroplane.
No kidding. How fast were you going? Speed limit, right?
Plus 50. Yeah, I didn't even need to be. I just wasn't thinking.
Must have not
And
got
the
your
closer
coffee
I
this
got here,
morning. Must have not got your coffee this morning.
Oh, I
You
usually
needed your black bread.
I did this last week too, right during the meeting. I don't like drinking it fast. I like to sip. On the trip, it took me 6 hours to get through it.
I did kind of do that with teas a lot too.
That.
It's more of a crutch.
Well, we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Consider for approval, minutes and agenda.
Second.
A motion from Jensvold and a second from Smith to approve the minutes and agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Morning.
Morning.
We're ready for you.
Good morning.
Did anybody get April Fooled yesterday?
I told the girls in my office, if you April Fool me, I fire you.
That's what I should have told TJ then. He changed the clock on my truck.
I guess the closest I got was waking up thinking I was younger again. That didn't work.
I got an email from Donald Trump that he said he was suspending his election. And then when you opened it up, he goes, April Fools, I'll never suspend my election.
Most of mine come from Don Jr.
Interesting reporting on the pipeline.
I would strongly recommend over the next 2 days, we're going to have some very interesting stuff going down. And
Was there a meeting that's scheduled?
Friday,
Yeah.
April 5th, at the Wesley Community Center. We have been that, so, we'll have that. I'll have an interview with two of the principal organizers of this whole thing coming down with a whole bunch of new information, including something that maybe this board might want to take into consideration. That CO2 plume with the new line that they are looking at just takes a nice northwesterly jog of a mile. We're in trouble.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
What do you have for us?
I'll mention a project that we learned more about that I sent you a message on, but there's a bridge on the Minnesota state line near Emmons. And the bridge has been maintained by the Freeborn County Road Department for probably all of history. And there's a maintenance agreement put in place in the 70s that said they'll take care of it, but when construction happens, we'd split the cost. Well, now that bridge is needing to be replaced, and Freeborn County applied for state funds and received them for all but about $177,000 worth of project. So we've agreed to split that portion of the project. So kind of see that project. I saw it coming. You know, we've been talking for about 2 years, but now we kind of have things in place with the funding agreement that they have. So
How far from Emmons is this one?
it's over the Winnebago River. So
Okay,
3
all right.
miles.
What was the total cost?
It's about $1 million.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that was a
Is that gonna be box culvert then?
No, it's a 3-span slab. Well, it might be a girder bridge, concrete. Seems like plenty of a structure to me.
Yeah.
I haven't seen their hydraulic design. I mean, you know, we do have a bridge. Every Winnebago River crossing we have is also a bridge. First one being that one diagonal one on A16.
Okay.
It looks pretty calm where it crosses this road, but you know, any more of the
Quite
requirements.
a few acres up there, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So that doesn't affect your 5-year plan or anything, does it?
I think depending on when
Now that we just passed it.
when they bid the project, we may have to amend our program because we have to program a project in the year that it is bid. And even though it's not our project, it still goes through the construction funds of our accounts. So we'll probably have to amend our program.
So like 88,000 or 90,000 or something.
Yeah, yep. And the actual money probably won't be paid until not this coming budget year, but the following. My expectation, because I think they'll pay it all up front, and then we'll just reimburse them once it's closed out.
It doesn't matter when it's constructed then.
You know, it's just kind of them working with us and us, you know, trying to decide what makes sense between us. So they're pretty flexible, it sounds like, and we can be too, I think. So, nothing to be done right now, but at some point we may need to take a couple steps.
You said Freeborn County, right?
Any maintenance?
Not too much going on. Taking snow equipment off the maintainers today.
That's why it's snowing.
Probably, yeah. Forecast
Had
looks,
enough slush on it just south of town, I started to hydroplane.
well,
Yeah, geez, you should have been out here, God
give you driving lessons.
It's supposed to be like 50 today. So
Yeah.
next week looks good. There's like 40s at night, so it's like we're going in the right direction.
Just doing the, and then I suppose you're still doing some of the lists and stuff to guys keep them busy, or?
Yeah, they're staying busy. Blade, I mean, they've been out blading off and on and stuff like that. So
Now we'll have some moisture to work with.
yeah, just kind of showing some small mud spots here and there. So maybe do a little bit of spotting. But definitely looks very good for what normal springs look like.
Yeah.
It's true.
Maybe we can hoard some rock.
That's the plan.
Mhm.
Anything else? Anything else? All right. You guys have any questions?
Nope.
All right. Set public hearing for L. Asmus -73-95 on 500th Street grade and pave project.
So, as I explained in my message to you guys, in order to approve a 5-year program, that includes a project that is new paving. We have to do a paving points calculation, and if the project has less than 50 points, public hearing is required before that can be approved. The point system is based on road classification, traffic count, a few other things. In this case, it's, I'll say, too close to other paved roads to get good scores. It's not a major collector or anything like that. It's a local road. And, traffic count's 110, pretty high, but also could receive more points there if it was, in the 200 or 300s.
What time of year did you have the traffic count thing out?
We just used the traffic counts from the DOT, and they are not
right. It was like in January that was out there or something. It's kind of a much more low traffic time than what that road actually gets.
I don't know when they were counted last. In 2019, but I don't know what time of year. It would have been sometime in the non-winter months, because they.
What year did they add on there?
That was just the last 2 years.
Oh, 3 years ago?
Yeah,
So-
if that was done in 19. So the traffic count has even gone up higher now, because there's a lot more people coming in and out and getting fertilizers.
So how short of 50 points was it?
I got 30, so quite a ways. It wasn't close enough where I thought we could do a little bit more investigation to firm up the numbers. The percent trucks and the traffic counts, things could be manipulated, could be investigated further to try to dial in. I don't think we would have gotten to 50.
But a public hearing kind of supersedes that point system then, where it's just required if you don't.
It's required if we don't receive the 50 points, so if we hold the public hearing, we're in compliance.
So the public hearing has to be 2 weeks.
It has to be, notice needs to be provided 4 to 20 days prior to the meeting. And so, if we set the public hearing today, it would run the 10th, and then we could hold it on the 23rd. I did ask the DOT about when the program could be approved, and they said, once I have the date set for the public hearing, I can put in the information to get the program finalized. So after today's meeting, if you guys approve a public hearing date, I'll just plug that in and move that on. It doesn't need to be reapproved.
We have a time we can do it on that day?
Which day?
23rd,
23rd.
right away or something.
Yeah, whatever time you want to do is fine.
9:30, 9:15.
Yeah, we can do 9.
Okay, well, I'll make the motion to set the public hearing. L. Osmus, 7395, 500th Street. Grade and pave project for 4/23 at 9 o'clock in the morning.
A second.
Got a motion from Jensvold and a second from Smith to set the public hearing for the Osmus 73-95 500th Street grade and pave project. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Hi, Chelsea. Is Chris available?
Sitting right there.
Oh, there she is. She's in the hall. All right, thanks.
Set to start.
I don't have anything that's not on the agenda.
Okay. You guys have anything for drainage? Okay. We'll go to number 5. Consider for approval B&W spraying quote for 2024.
Nathan sent me this, and seems pretty accurate. I don't have any concerns on it. And usually they come in lower when the bills actually come in. So he's doing pretty good on staying with his dad's 3-year rotation and getting the hang of that.
But he also, if we find a spot, he goes and takes care of that.
Yeah, yep.
Leland one, that was a concern. Is that on here?
Which one? Leland?
After we cleaned it, all of those trees that were coming up?
Oh, on the west side. Oh, on the west side.
Which one would that be?
That'd be DD 11.
And it's on here.
It's on.
Okay. I will have to mention to him that DD11 has different parts of it to make sure that the bill gets done correctly.
Right.
Yeah, just some extra attention there too.
DD54, he quoted it to Worth County, but we're actually the lead on that district. It's a tri-district with Hancock. The main ditch does not go into Hancock, so I don't know why they don't pay into that, but anyway, so when that bill comes, we'll get our portion of that. Did he talk to you about secondary road projects?
No, I was gonna ask you about that.
Yep, I just saw it right now.
Just the one spot?
It doesn't say, it just said secondary road projects at $1,000.
Yeah, I'm sure it's just the one spot on 842 that they take care
Okay. Okay, I'll make you a copy of that, I missed that.
of. Okay.
Where on A42 is that?
Oh, you know, back when, I think it was when the road was widened, they bought and moved the creek over by 60th Avenue, I think it is, 70th? And so we take care of both sides of that creek as it runs parallel to the road. They spray it for us. Needs to be done this year.
Yeah, it'd be about the right time. All right.
I'll make a motion to approve the B&W spraying quote for 2024.
Second?
On a motion from Jensvold and a second from Smith to approve the B&W spraying quote for 2024. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Right.
today afternoon. Like a non-foreman guy that head up the crew.
Do we have to stamp one of these?
I don't know.
Or Carla,
What's that?
we need to stamp one of these B&Ws.
Yes, please.
All right, just do this
Yes,
one.
please.
Do that one.
You're doing, you're doing.
Is that employment stuff?
Yeah.
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 Has joined. Has joined.
Do you want one?
Sure.
Able to get along with Hill and Doug up there by the New Ring Cemetery.
Yeah.
A couple of very rough characters.
You're welcome.
Do we have the claims here?
There's a lady that came through.
Oh, Julie. I didn't get them from her yet.
Yeah, sorry, I'll go get them.
Must be on the board or something. in the cemetery. She was the one that made the decisions, I guess. She was the one that made she did.
Short hair? Need short hair? Who knows?
I can't remember if she had short hair or not.
Yeah,
I can't remember if she had short hair or not.
yeah. I'll just wait, that memory stuff gets even better.
Right. No, I think we got it. We haven't done anything up there yet, but. We haven't done anything up there yet.
Figured out.
Yeah.
Figured out.
I think part of the problem was like every time they dig a new grave, they have extra dirt. Well, that driveway's got wider, so now the end of the pipe is plugged.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so then it holds water there.
That's why it's sitting, water sits there all the time.
Not, I mean, part of it, the ditch can get cleaned and then we'll just cut the back slope a little bit. Mow it. That's what their goal was.
Yeah. I know they just want to get rid of that wet spot. Make it a little more presentable by being able to mow it all.
Right. It does look nicer without the pine trees there. You can see at that stop sign now looking south.
Dennis Severson has joined.
They're improving it.
Has joined.
I think we can help them out.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Appreciate it. You were surprised by the The immediate attention you've got
Has joined.
just work out conveniently for you.
Yeah, it wasn't too far away, really.
Yeah, it wasn't too far away.
Thought I really had a ball.
Yeah. Everyone gets lucky every once in a while.
Yeah, really.
Everybody.
I'd rather hide up.
Colin, you can pull a chair over to the other end of that table and move it out if you want to face the group.
would like.
Yeah. Pull the table out and move a chair.
Really?
Do you have something for open forum? Well, we haven't moved on to the next subject though, so it's open.
I just want some more clarification.
Okay,
So school funding is not in, but you,
the taxation was,
so when you said our property tax would go 4 point whatever, that included the school.
that was our budget,
That's your budget.
our funds, yeah,
So then school funding is on top of that.
not part of that, no.
So it'll increase higher than.
Because of what they were last year.
Yeah. But they're showing an increase as well.
Yeah, the county's separate from what the school is.
But the property taxes are the same. They fund school plus county, but, right?
So, yeah, but what we were talking about, we were just talking about county.
Yeah. Yes. But it will increase more to allow for school.
Yeah. Yep.
But we can only talk to ours.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
They had their own public hearing, didn't they? Or it's coming up.
I think last night.
Okay. Yeah, when I got home from my meeting, I got my letter in the mail from the school, so.
Yeah.
if you, I can talk to you more after the meeting if you wanna stop by my office or.
When is the budget hearing?
The actual budget hearing is the 16th at 9 a.m.
So depending on how long this 9:31 goes, we'll have a gap between then and 9:30, 10:30 timed one, so there may be some time in between.
Talk some more.
Yeah. She can probably talk to you then. We'll be waiting till 10:30 till our next one after this.
They probably use their phones.
Who's ever on the line right now, we're getting some back feed from your phone, so if you could mute yourself until the time for you to talk, it would be beneficial for all of us.
Okay. Dennis Severson.
Has left.
If that was Dennis Severson, we do have his letter
Yeah.
in the packet. So we do have the information that he wants us to have.
You're accommodating.
All right, well, it's 9:30, so we have the public hearing for DD 89 annexation and reclassification report. Colin, oh no, this is a public hearing, so we'll need to open the public hearing. Susan,
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
got a motion from Smith and a second from Jensvold to open the public hearing for the DD 89 annexation and reclassification reports. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. All
Tom
right.
Brackey.
Colin?
Has joined.
Sure. So, first of all, I guess, is anybody specifically here for the annexation? Because I printed out a lot of the copies of the reclassification stuff. There's less involved with annexation, so I've got fewer copies. If anybody wants a copy. So I'm just, yeah, this is, we're looking at annexation of additional lands for Drainage District 89 here in Winnebago County. Just to kind of, like, how did we get to this point? Well, as many of you probably remember, there was a project that was proposed to work on the main tile and DD.
There are 4 participants.
And we did an engineer's report. As part of that report, and that project didn't move forward as far as the improvement that was proposed. But part of that report was looking at the existing assessment schedule for the drainage district. And basically, the assessment schedule that was there was the same one that was created when the drainage district was created. Facilities and tile constructed over 100 years ago. And at that time, obviously technology and things have changed, that's part of it, but they basically set that up to pay for the totality of the project. So it was one assessment schedule for all the lands in the district, all the lands benefited that they saw at that time, for all the tile that were constructed. And so that was, anytime any bills were to be paid after that point in time, that's what was always used. So it didn't matter if work was done on a little lateral that only drained a small number of acres, or if it was the main tile that drains, that everybody's water goes through. It was all based on that assessment schedule. So when we were looking at potentially doing a project and we looked at that, okay, well, basically my conclusion was whether we do a project or not, it's a good time to go ahead and get that taken care of. And this is kind of talking more about reclassification, but I'll tie it all together. Essentially, that part of it where you have these potential for people to be paying for a lot of repairs that maybe they don't even drain through that tile. That's a big part of this, is splitting it out into separate assessment schedules. So anyways, that project did not go forward, but the reclassification part of it did. So when we look at the reclassification, we are looking at, okay, what lands are benefited? And we know the parcels that are already in the district. And basically we're looking at topography, see how the water flows, and if we can see that there's where the tiles are at, and different things of that nature. And basically, there's a small amount of property that we see as benefiting from the facilities of the district that should really be in the district that currently are not. So it totals 22 and a half acres. And then that's 5 different parcels. So most of those parcels, it's only a few acres on each parcel. But basically, they're using these facilities of the district, and they just have never been a part of the district, never paid into it. And now's kind of a time when we're looking at who benefits and how much as part of the reclassification. Oftentimes we're doing annexation at the same time to clean up some of these lands that really should be in the district but currently aren't. And typically, like in this case, and not everybody has a map, but typically what we find is around the outer fringes of the district. That's where once in a while some lands were missed back in the day. They did remarkably well for 100 years ago. We've got a lot of fancy computer technology and maps and things now that we can use to help us do a better job of that. Once in a while you'll see that for some reason in the course of time, a parcel right in the middle of the district maybe for some reason isn't on the assessment schedule currently. That didn't happen here. But sometimes they get dropped off if there was a parcel split or something and it didn't get updated in the schedule. So we just make sure to bring those all, make sure they're officially in the district as they're benefited from the facilities of the district.
I have a comment too.
Yeah.
On that map, it also has a parcel that's way out,
Yes.
outside of the district. So whether they put it in northwest of the northwest instead of southwest of the northwest, whatever, that parcel's been in it forever, paying, and they have no benefit whatsoever. So it also cleans up that. And in our new system that we use, a parcel can't be left off anymore. To do a split, if there's a $100 benefit, the split has to equal $100. So a parcel can't fall off anymore like it used to. So it's nice when we do this because now it will be correct for future.
How far removed was it?
If you have that map in the upper left-hand corner, you see this
That's got the
dotted line. That's a parcel that's obviously separated, completely separate from this.
So it was just a
Actually
typo
in the
at
district.
At
certain
some,
times.
in 100 years ago, or
Yeah.
when they updated it from original to that,
Just put
that's
the
what
wrong
it
parcel
says.
number in or something.
So
Something. Yep.
the description is in there, and that's what we use to get a parcel number.
That would be noticed at some point.
So now they're not invited to this meeting because they're no longer going to be in it. So,
Well, and a lot of, you know, the assessment schedules are tables. So you can't necessarily see it in map form to be able to look and be like, well, that's obviously shouldn't be, that's not right. So you don't necessarily see it until you bring it into map form, and then you start, oh, what's going on there?
Accidentally over the years, just looking at the old drainage maps, you know, it's just like, that's not close.
So just to clarify, the 5 different areas that are proposed to be annexed into this drainage district will come out of another drainage district? Or will they be?
That's a good question. I'm not familiar again what drainage districts butt up against this. But one thing I'll say is that there maybe is a misconception that you can only be in one drainage district, and that's not really the case. Now, that's another part is, yes, we brought that parcel into the drainage district, but we're only saying that this part of it. So on the assessment schedules, it just says that parcel ID is in the district, and then you use the number of acres kind of to help determine benefit. But there's a lot of parcels that somewhere in the middle of the parcel there's a watershed break and water goes different directions. So that parcel is in both districts. It's just that their benefits should be split based on how much land drains either way. If that makes sense.
but we wouldn't, you know, I don't take them out of another district.
That's not
So
our,
when that gets reclassified, it would
Yeah.
That's when it would show
If
up.
there was an issue with that, yeah.
But if there was someone in this room that knew that new annexation was drained a different way, they should bring that up
Yes.
now and say that, so that this annexation could possibly be changed. Right?
Part of that too, though, is if a particular parcel pays into both districts, you have the right to use either one, regardless of location.
Without getting in trouble like some people have done.
But you have to pay in both districts.
Okay.
So, and we did have one comment. Chris, I don't think I printed that one off.
Oh, so it lets up to 82.
I don't know.
and then the other one, there's a gap over here. It's just white. That's probably this here. Here. It's probably some of this.
That's that.
Yeah. So on a current map on the west side, some of that's being annexed is in white here, so it wasn't in a district.
Oh, okay.
Might overlap some, but probably fills in some of that.
Are you looking for the letters? I have them here.
There's,
Yeah, Diane Riley.
Yes, I'd like to talk on her behalf.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, yeah, there's some of that ground that,
Tom, we're losing you.
Before he comes back, she says she is against the annexation of the property to be included in the drainage district. She can see no positive outcome for the farm or any neighboring farm. In her opinion, this is totally unnecessary. And please record her objection, which I had done with Colin. But her surface water still goes there. So, I mean, she's still gonna be part of it. She should have been part of it. That parcel should have been part of it. So unless Tom, when he gets back on, has some, because this is his aunt, so if he's got some knowledge of some tile that maybe went a different way, maybe her parcel could have some kind of reduction, but that's when we know that is right now. So when he comes back, if that's something that is true, but she would still have surface water. Yep.
Tom, are you still with us? Didn't say he dropped off.
Tom Brackey.
Tom, can
Has
you?
left.
Oh, he's left.
Maybe you can hear us, but
Yeah, evidently.
Must've been on the road.
Accidentally muted himself.
But he left.
So we could go on if there's any comments.
yeah, does anybody else have any other?
What was her name again?
Diane Riley. I don't know if you copied the letter in the.
We haven't.
Yeah, we have
Oh,
it.
you do, okay.
I was just looking on the benefits
Oh,
part of hers. Do you see it?
No.
And those tables should be in alphabetical order, so it should be Ryan.
Well, there it is. Diane and Frank. Did you list the benefit units on all of theirs?
do you have an extra one of those annexation reports, Colin?
I can give you mine.
I can maybe look and see if I have the one. Yeah, I don't want to take yours.
Tom Brackey.
Has joined.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, Tom.
Okay, yeah, I could hear everything you were saying, but it was just, you couldn't hear me for some reason. You were coming in crystal clear, but, yeah, some of that water that you're trying to annex in there goes to the northwest on Diane Riley's. I mean, I've farmed that for 20 years. I've never turned in a bill to the drainage district. We've always just fixed it ourselves, and I know which way the water runs. And it's definitely, you're wrong on some of that ground up there to the northwest.
So it's
So did you see the report, Tom, online?
No, Diane sent it all to me.
Oh, okay.
This is Colin. Just for clarification, so some of those parcels, we're talking about like a few acres for each parcel. So like a little bit of land, kind of in the eastern part of those parcels. So we're not saying that the entire parcel drains east.
Yeah, I'm just looking where your line is, Colin.
You're
And,
talking about where that
'cause-
line's at.
Yeah, because like where that gravel road, it kind of got a snake in it, you know. There's a big intake, not an intake, but a tile that goes under, like an 8-inch that goes under the road there. I think it's a 6-inch under up there on that northwest corner, and those drain them ponds west of that acreage there. You know, it might show with your maps on, you know, your computer and that, but the water definitely goes to the northwest there. I mean, I've repaired it many times, so.
Okay. And again, just to be clear, you're saying that all that land in section 21 drains west. It doesn't drain east into this district.
Well, I don't know where the line is, Colin. I don't have a map with me. But I saw on Diane's map that you'd sent her that a bunch of that water there, some of them ponds that you included, that definitely goes to the northwest. And then everything on the north side of the road on that one field, there's no tile in that field at all. And there's a big driveway there, so I know, there's no surface drainage. There's nothing in there that you were trying to annex there. So on the north side of the gravel road, too.
North of 368?
Yep.
So the road where it's windy, Tom, on the
Yep.
south side of that would go to this district, but nothing north of, or on the west side of that road, and then north of 368. Is that what you're saying?
No, on the south side of the gravel road there, west of that acreage, that water there goes to the northwest. There's a 6-inch right there where it makes a sharp bend and straightens out east and west again.
Okay.
It goes under the gravel road and goes.
Correct. And then it goes down through Diane's field on the north side of the gravel road there. It cuts that corner there because I've had to repair that. It's real shallow there, some peat. In that field on the north side of the road, in the southwest corner of that field, the tile goes and heads northwest.
So it should.
Then it heads kind of over towards Bob Benson's there.
So should it be in 5?
I'll have to apologize for not being able to attend there. I'm still down south for the winter, so I know it's making it tough for you guys.
Yeah, it's snowing here, if you care.
No, well, it's 80 here, so.
Yeah. I mean, from the sounds of that, some of that land shouldn't be in the district. I will say it does make it hard to, I mean, that's kind of the point of these hearings, but it's a lot, it's helpful if that information is shared before the hearing so we can look at it together, but because I've got the maps I've got, so I can't really go back and look at anything sitting right here. So that makes it a little bit more of a challenge, but presuming what you're saying is true, I mean, that sounds like those lands maybe shouldn't be annexed into the district.
Correct.
Now, I will say that even in cases where it's tiled a different, like if it's tiled out of the district, if it's tiled through a hill or a ridge to get out of the district, a lot of times we would leave it in the district. We would just give it a reduction by basically saying, well, if there's surface runoff, that's still going to come into the district, but the tile drain water is going to go out of the district. And I don't, again, I'm not perfectly familiar with every little piece of ground on here. You're talking about a pond. So that might change things, because if all the surface water runs to a pond and then it drains out of a tile away from the district, then they probably that land shouldn't be in the district. So
Correct. And like the stuff on that north side of that gravel road you were trying to annex in, there is no tile in that field. And there's a big long driveway there that runs to the north there.
Yeah,
so there's no surface draining either.
Well, the water that dumps on there's got to go somewhere. And we don't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to have tile. I'm not, this isn't just a general comment, but we don't look for whether or not there is currently tile in a piece of ground to say, oh, there's tile in there that connects in. We know that for sure, because we honestly don't know where all the private tile is. That'd be really hard to determine without people providing all their maps or going out there with a backhoe and digging a bunch of stuff up.
And we have justified taking it out in another case by having tile maps.
Yeah, no, and that's that's where I'm trying to make sure we're clear here, Tom. If you think all the water is not coming into this district, that's one thing. I think we would just say, well, then that shouldn't be annexed in. But if it's tiled out, but surface runoff can still come in. I mean, that's how I drew the boundaries, is looking at the topography. So it looked to me like that's the high spot where water inside this boundary would flow east into this district. And so if that's the case, then we'd still annex those lands in, but when we get to the reclassification stage, I can tell you I didn't base it on tiling the other direction. So we would talk about giving a reduction for those lands in the reclassification hearing part of this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but like where Miller just bought that acreage on the north side of the gravel road, his driveway raised up, I suppose it's 2-3 feet high, so there's no way the surface water is going to run into this district. I mean, that's my big thing.
When it gets to,
You got a man-made dam there that is not going to allow the water to run to the east. So,
but would it run down the side of it to the east?
no,
Where?
absolutely not.
It would go
It's
west.
really high on the road.
It would go west.
It goes west there. You'd have to go to the northwest.
I mean, yeah, I don't have my elevation maps and stuff in front of me, so I really can't.
Possibly could bring it up on Beacon. Or
Beacon is.
the
No.
pictometry has contours.
Yeah.
Josh,
Yeah.
there is a driveway there going to the acreage.
And so the water doesn't go this way.
To drive by, it looks like it would go out of the district.
Okay.
That's all I can tell you.
I was just asking.
I'm not familiar with
landowners
the
around here.
title system or anything, but to drive by, it looks like it would not go into the district.
Okay. And if there's no culvert in the road to cross it over,
I have no idea.
so that would be the north side of the road, right? So what about the south side?
He's saying that the south side there's tile. Okay, I get what you're saying. Maybe the north.
Yeah, on the south side of the gravel road, the tile that takes the water to the northwest, it goes under the road there, like a 6-inch, and it shows up on the tile maps if you pull them off the county.
As a private, in the private tab or in district tiles?
No, I'm sure it'd be in the district, because I went in and got the maps, and it showed up on there, so. On the county tiles. It shows that 6-inch going underneath the road there. To the northwest.
Does it show it on your map in
I'm
21?
trying to pull it up. Does it show?
21.
Right. The tile that he's talking about is a different district.
DD5, lap 26.
But is it in this area?
And so that takes it the other way.
That comes right into that spot.
It comes,
going across the road to the piece that he's talking about.
So that comes to.
That's why I used this
That's the one I still use. That's the one I still use.
Okay, that's the road. So this shows it's stopping just short of the road. The district tile. shows that.
Number 26 comes short of the road. So it must be private that comes to the road the way.
Correct. I've got that situation on several. When you're on the fringe there, you know, they run the county tile up to the road, and then it's, you know, our job to hook onto it.
Which would be about.
Everybody's got their maps out, Tom.
Good. I mean, this is pretty minimal. I mean, the big topic is going to be this reduction on the state land. I don't want to tie up all your time here today, but
I used to have a tab that said private tiles.
It's basically in this straightaway, which is right here. It's about halfway. It's about in here.
It wasn't, I think at one point she decided, is it accurate enough to actually have it on there? I think that's what the decision was.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say.
So that tile, I'm not showing that tile being in this district, and even there's stuff across the road that I'm not including for annexation. But he's saying that he tiles all this stuff on the south side of the road to that, is what I'm hearing. Is that right, Tom?
there's just one little, like 4 or 5 inch tile that runs from that one little pond west of the acreage. That's it. I mean, there's hardly any tile in that farm. But it definitely goes to the, I've hooked it up and it goes to the northwest there.
If I was digging tile with a spade 100 years ago, I would take the easiest route. And you mentioned the tile is shallow. I had to fix it, so I would think. I've never seen it, but like I say, if I was digging with a spade, I know the way I would take it. The easiest route.
Here's kind of what I'm thinking on this, because we want to have the annexation taken care of before we get before we can approve the reclassification, because they affect each other, right? So if we had this annexation set up that these lands were going to come in, and then we did this reclassification and include those lands, obviously we'd have to. And it wouldn't be that difficult. Basically, this report, let's say theoretically we just said, oh, we're not going to annex a couple parcels. In that report, in the schedules that those parcels are in, those are just deleted out. And everything else stays the same. There's part of me that wants to be able to look at that a little bit closer and talk to Tom more about it. Make sure we get it right, because we do this once every 100 years. And I know it hasn't been done for 100 years. So that's kind of the goal. But I know there's going to be some topics of discussion with the reclass report, that there's a potential that, maybe we'd have to have another meeting on that anyway. And if that's the case, I'd probably, if we end up there with the reclass, I'd probably like to just hold off on making a final decision on the annexation for now as well. And maybe just because that's up in the air, maybe that's not a bad idea just to go down that route for now.
Can we just close this hearing, open up the reclass to talk about what everybody's here for?
Somehow.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't stop it now.
And then
Can we do a continuance on
we'll
it?
do a continuance, and I would remail a letter out to everybody with dates.
We don't have to.
You don't have to make a motion.
Right.
We can just close, you'd make a motion to close the hearing, but we wouldn't make any decisions.
you'd want to make a decision to set, you'd want to set another
A new hearing.
date, because if you just leave it, then if you set it, then you're required to send letters and do newspaper notice and all that stuff over again. If you just
Right.
continue.
So if we just
continue it,
continue, she doesn't have to send letters out to everybody again.
you wouldn't have to. Especially if it's just the annexation.
So I could just let Tom know when that is, if he's off the call when we make that decision.
But he'll be working with Tom in the meantime, so.
True.
Yeah, and I don't know that I have your contact information, Tom, but we can get that sorted out.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because if I was in your position, I want to get this right, and in the position that I'm in, I want to get this right. But I really would like a chance to look at it a little bit closer, and I know it doesn't help, I know you don't have a map in front of you, and we've got, all we can see is what the map that I put together, that just shows a boundary, so we can't see any more of this additional information. So I think that's probably the best course of action.
Well, I'm going to be back in a week, and I mean, you can give me a call, and we'll just go out there and look. And once you see it, firsthand, you can see like that driveway going to that acreage and that. I mean, there's no way the water's going to surface drain that way. So.
Okay. So is that the only area that we're gonna be looking more into then?
Does anyone else have any other areas that we need to look at?
Okay.
Because this is like affects 80 acres. The area benefited that he's talking about on your schedule says that it affects 80.
Or just the additional?
Yeah.
It's not very much.
It's only a few acres.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly, and it's not that big a deal, but my biggest concern is I just feel like you're trying to chisel a little bit of ground away from the other district, to claim more taxes or whatever, or more payments, and then you're wanting to let 20% off the state ground. I guess that's my biggest gripe. Because I mean, I'm all for paying my fair share, but like when you want to relieve the state for 20%, I mean, I have a real problem with that. Because when they bought that land and when they put it into that wetland program, we were assured that they were going to pay their fair share of the drainage district.
Tom,
and now all of a sudden, we're down the road. And
we haven't got to that part yet.
We'll get into that, but when I'm looking at annexation, what I'm trying to do is get it right with the information that I have available to me, and that's part of why why they have public hearings and send notices out. So if there's information like what you talked about today, that can be considered, because I'm not trying to just add acres in willy-nilly. If it looks like they should be included in and they never have in the past, then they should. We're trying to do what's fair.
Well, some of the acres are actually coming out.
Yeah.
One up in the corner there.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So it's,
But we want to get it right is the bottom line. So that's what we're trying to do.
Okay.
And I know
Okay.
Tom, in the past, when the original guys walked out there and did all this, they just went by fence line and not watershed. In today's technology, they can find the actual watershed. So we've annexed in a lot over the years of what should have been in the district and wasn't. So this isn't new. And we don't try to just get people in the district to help pay. That would never be a
But
thing
this
to do.
is exactly what we want to do,
But this is
because
what
it's
we
the
wanna
only way to
hear.
get it right.
Exactly, because now, 100 years from now, when they go through this, they don't have to do it again. It's right going forward now. So
goal
yes,
is to get it as fair as possible.
good to do all this, you bet.
So what you're saying, Tom, basically I agree with you. If the water is tiled and surfaces not into this district, then it shouldn't be annexed.
Correct.
So.
Is it possible for you, since you're over this way today, to go out and just physically look at it to start with and see if it's even worth getting together with him, another trip over? Maybe it's just visibly obvious to you if you went out there today after the meeting.
Yeah, I can do that. And then I would like to look at it on the computer
Right.
to see the light, this LiDAR and stuff like that. I'd like to just look at that, review that again.
So do we just need to get out of
So you're saying to, and we're still in the public hearing for annexation and reclassification. We're not going to close the one part
Oh,
out. We're just doing the whole
It's for both.
reports.
yeah.
So we can move on to the reclassification now.
And then we'll set a date when we're all done to continue.
Yep, that works.
Okay.
All right. So moving on to the reclassification. So hopefully, did everybody get handouts? Maybe not yet. Okay. So I kind of briefed on where we got to the annexation part and the reclassification part. There's been a lot of comments, written comments filed, and I think and we've had previous discussions about this, and Tom touched on it too, but the big elephant in the room on this reclassification is the fact that about a third of the district is publicly owned ground. And in this commissioner's report that we have, basically, how we're doing reclassification and the benefits that we're looking at. We look at all these factors and put them together and determine benefit. Well, that's typically made for farmland, and a lot of these are like restored wetlands and things. We ended up doing an adjustment, a downward adjustment or a reduction of 20% for these publicly owned grounds or wetlands. So that's been a big. I think we're probably going to end up spending most of our time talking about that. I think before we get into that in totality, I want to go at least a little bit through this report, some of the other things, at least explain our thought process and what we're doing. We'll come back to this. There's a letter handout that I wrote trying to talk about how we, like, what is reclassification, what we're required to do by code, by state law, how we tried to address that in what we did here for DD 89, and then maybe talk about other things that we can do to address some of these, what I consider to be valid concerns about these wetlands, particularly in drainage districts. So we'll get back to that. But for this reclassification, there's dollars maps, map packet that is a handout too, and that has all the assessment schedules that were created as part of this reclassification. So again, currently everything's all on one schedule. This has different assessment schedules based on the different tiles and laterals and things. And we tried to do it what I call kind of in a most practical way. So it isn't necessarily for every little lateral, because there's some that are a couple 100 feet long, and they maybe drain just a little bit of land, so it didn't make practical sense to go through doing a whole nother assessment schedule and dollars map and all that. We just lumped it in with the bigger tile. We also kind of split the main into lower and upper portions, and part of that was to try to just for example, and looking at the map, maybe I'm gonna try to get to a better map. Yeah. In the reclass report, if you get to the first map, it shows the names of all the tiles. So just for example, it shows the benefited lands map for the main, lateral 1, 2, and 4. Basically, that main, we cut it, it actually, we're calling it Lat 8 now, but it does extend up all the way to 210th Avenue. We kind of broke it at lateral 6. And the reason for that is if any work is done upstream of that, all these lands that are drained by, they're draining their water into lateral 6 and 5, they don't use that tile. So we're trying to, if any work's done upstream, then they wouldn't have to pay to help fix that. But there's a limit to how much you can break it down and be still efficient as far as trying to do this reclassification. So that was kind of the basis of where we started in breaking this into these different schedules. There's, just for history note, with some of these wetlands that were put in, there's some tile that was originally constructed that is basically abandoned. I mean, when they put in those wetlands, they plugged, crushed, tried to render the tile unusable. And so those, for future, are gone. They're not part of the district anymore. They're abandoned. The lateral 9 tile is located completely in county road right away. And so we didn't make a schedule for that because if there's any maintenance needs there or repairs needed, the code says that the county secondary roads are responsible to make those repairs, pay the cost. So there's really no need to have a separate assessment schedule for that. We did 5 different assessment schedules, and then just reclassification. Basically, the code says, okay, what our job is to determine benefit. So that's how we set these schedules up. We ask ourselves the question for each tract of land that's benefited is, how much does this piece of land benefit from this tile? That's kind of a simplistic way of putting it, but that's in essence reclassification. And that's what we're held to by the code. That's the instructions. Now, how do you determine what benefit is? That's kind of an open-ended question. And different people have different opinions on that. What we have typically looked at, I kind of have a breakdown of that in a report, but in the report, we look at several different factors. So for a parcel, how much land in that parcel is benefited. So you've got parcels of different sizes. You have parcels where some of the land benefits and maybe some of it water is drained the other direction. So how many acres of land in that parcel are benefited from the district facility? And we look at the soil type. So kind of the basics for that is naturally wet soils that wouldn't be good for much unless you drained them, and then if you drain them, they might be productive prime farmland. Those are the kinds of lands that when we're looking at the soil type factor, they would have a higher benefit than lands that say are sandy and naturally well drained. They don't have as much of a need for supplemental drainage systems. Do they still use it? Yes. Would it still benefit them? Yes. But less so than the low swampy grounds that if you drain them are prime farmland. We look at the distance from the facility. So if you have a parcel that's a mile away from the tile that you're looking at, they have to do a lot to get their water to that tile. So they have less of a benefit from that tile than somebody who's right next to it, or the tile goes right through the property, and they just have direct access to tie in. Another factor we look at is the use of the facility. So if you've got a mile-long facility, a tile, we'll just say, if a parcel drains in at the lower end of that tile, they're using only a short distance of it. Do they still need to pay? Do they still benefit from it? Yes, but somebody who's at the very upper end, that whole tile had to be built all the way to them. And if it wasn't, they'd have to do a lot to get their water out. So if they're using the full length of the tile, they have a higher benefit. We look at runoff. So basically, and that comes more into play when we've got towns and things like that that are included in drainage districts. But the county secondary roads do have a little bit of a bump with this runoff factor. And then this adjustment factor, which that's coming back to the public grounds thing, but we look at all these factors and we combine them for a single parcel, and that determines their overall benefit. And then we compare that for all the parcels that are benefited for a particular facility, and that's essentially how we set up these assessments. I'll just go through what this report says on the adjustment factor, then we'll go into this letter. So I talked here about how Iowa code requires that for state-owned wetlands, the benefits do not consider any benefit realized if the wetland were drained or converted to another land use. So in other words, like in the past, I've heard from just individual landowners who might have a WRP easement or contract on their property, but it's a 30-year easement. And so in those types of cases, or just a CRP contract, where it's grasslands, and I haven't made any sort of these types of adjustments because at the end of 30 years or whatever, they can put it back to farmland. But the code is saying that for state-owned wetlands, you can't assume that at some point in the future it's going to go back to farmland. It could, but the code says that we can't consider that for reclassification. And I talk about how the restored wetland areas do still benefit from the facilities of DD80, and I think we're all probably in agreement on that. They're not zero payers. They use the district tile. When those wetlands fill up, they overflow and dump into an intake into the tile system. There's lands that's not 100% of the public ground here is wet. There's uplands that are grasslands, and I know there's still functioning tile in those parts of the properties. So they benefit from that. And then I said, however, we acknowledge the benefit is less than it would be for agricultural lands. We have therefore applied an adjustment factor of 0.8, equivalent to a 20% reduction. And then we talked about, I'm going to circle back to that, but we've also applied an adjustment factor of 0.7, a 30% reduction to the timberland in the west half of the southwest quarter of Section 22. Land has been forested since at least the 1930s and is extremely unlikely to ever be farmed. It is also not tiled nor ever expected to be tiled. So if you are familiar with the area and you've driven by that, you probably can tell what I'm talking about.
Maggie Berger has joined.
Ground with trees on it. So essentially that was giving them a reduction. And I do want to be clear about these reductions too. with the way that these factors are set up without an adjustment factor, it's basically presuming, it's more or less presuming that it's farmland and that there's a benefit to draining the land for agricultural production, or in the case of an acreage, for protecting the buildings, the site, what have you. And I talked about the soil factor, how we have this high benefit for the soil types that are wet, that are naturally wet, swampy, that sort of thing, because if you drain them and you farm them, that's a big benefit. You took land that you couldn't use and you turned it into prime farmland. Well, that's not what's happening with those lands. And essentially going back to, okay, we have to ask ourselves, based on the code, it's got to be based on benefit. What's the benefit of this tile to this piece of land? And we struggled as commissioners, and we discussed that for a long time about, okay, should we do a reduction or not? But really, in my mind, when it comes down to it, if I look at one of these properties and just think about it, everything else is the same. But the only difference is it farmland or is it wetlands? And then asking myself, what is the benefit from this tile? And is it different? Does it make a difference if it's wetland or farmland? And in my opinion, yes. There is a difference. And that's essentially what we ended on with that 20% reduction is based on the rules of classification and how we have to determine just benefit. Some of these other points made in these comments were valid points, but in reclassification, we're stuck with benefit. And strictly going on that, these lands don't have as much benefit as they would if they were farmland. Put another way, maybe, if you took the tile system away, and that is farmland or wetlands, which one's going to be hurtful? And I think the answer is the farmland. Now, with all that being said, I'm kind of just going through all this without. With all that being said, I think there's still discussion. I mean, we're open to discussion on what reduction amount is appropriate. I don't think we're stuck on a specific number. And I'll point this out too, that, myself and the commissioners that were involved in this reclass report, we brought forth these recommendations. We're having a hearing today, and there's been comments filed, and there's landowners here today that I'm sure are going to have comments on it. The board can consider those, and changes can be made, basically, at the board's discretion. So it's not a done deal. Basically, I guess we're limited in a sense on what we can and can't consider in reclassification by the code. And so that's what we were trying to do with this report. I do think there's several things in the comments, and we'll go through all those, that I personally, I can't really convince myself that can be correlated to benefit that we're talking about in reclassification. and that this is sort of a side subject, but there is a drainage resolution that the county has that was adopted in 2014 that covers some of that stuff. I think there's more that could be expanded to cover more of some of these concerns. Just for example, a common one is, okay, we've got these state wetland grounds, and it's likely that at some point in the future they're going to let trees grow on there and the roots will plug the tile. So who's responsible for that? Well, if we handle that through reclassification, everybody would be responsible, or at least depending on where it plugged, the right assessment schedule. So it would be a shared cost. Now, my opinion is, if that happens, the state's really at fault for that. They should pay 100% of the bill, not spread out. And we're talking about a 20% thing, and maybe some of those pieces are most appropriately handled in something more like this resolution, which that's been in place for 10 years. I know that part of it isn't specifically in there, but something like that could be added to that. And maybe it's the point in time where we're 10 years down the line and we know more now than we did then, and it's time to look at that again and see if there's some of these things that legitimate concerns that can be addressed as part of the resolution. And that would apply not just to DD89. It would be to every drainage district in the county that the Board of Supervisors are trustees for. So that's kind of how in thinking all this through, that's kind of where that's kind of what I wanted to explain to you. Just what reclassification is, kind of why we did what we did, what we were thinking. Not that we don't agree with a lot of the comments that were made. It's just that in the context of benefit, what is the benefit of this piece of land from this tile? Some of those complaints just don't fit that. Of what we can really consider for reclassification. So maybe some of those concerns are better addressed in something more like a resolution. To make sure that drainage district infrastructure is protected. I mean, we don't want to put in these wetlands and have it ruin drainage for everybody. That wasn't the purpose of these drainage districts to begin with. So I guess I'm thinking about where to go from here. If I read these, or we just start a discussion, or
there's actually a 10:30 that they have to do a phone call with. So can everybody please hold their comments
right now?
And maybe we can have that quick and come back, and then people can have their comments. That.
Are we okay with that, taking a break from this one and then come back to it at a certain time?
Thank you.
Like,
I mean, you
we
could,
have this discussion in 20 minutes, maybe. We'll probably get quite a bit. Just if we just plan on 10:50, we'll reconvene this hearing. We have a lot to discuss from this one and come back to it if we can.
Hello?
Hi, Maggie.
Hi there, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. All right, so it's 10:30 a.m. or a little after. Maggie Berber, Spear Financial Discussion. General obligation, possible debt schedule and timeline.
Yep. So I have done a little research. We had a conversation, you'll recall, a few weeks back, and talked about what you could borrow from the existing TIF area that has about 3 more years in its TIF life for collection. So in that, we said we could borrow about $6,150,000. That repayment would be about $2.3 million in 26, 27, and 28. And that would conclude the 20-year life of one of your wind turbine farms. The other conversation that came up at that time, if you'll recall, was that there is another wind turbine farm, a newer wind turbine farm, that has not been set aside in a TIF area has not had the start date, but it is partially through its 0 to 30% taxation model. So the county assessor did a great job and provided some good numbers to us about that other wind turbine farm that has not already had a time started on it. With that being said, she gave me some estimated taxable valuations for that turbine farm in the coming years as it reaches that 30% mark. What we did is we took that into account. There's that business tax credit that we took into account. We took the rate base.
Carol Abby has joined.
We took the base value off, and that gives us a new increment amount.
Tom Brackey
Has left.
What we did is we took that into account. There's that business tax credit that we took into account.
Carol Abby.
Maggie?
Are you guys still there? Can you hear me? I'm getting a lot of
Carol
feedback. I
Abby.
was just making
So,
sure that
I'd like to, oh, there it is. Now we're cleared up. Maggie, you still there?
Okay. Yep, I'm still here if you guys can still hear me.
Yeah, no, that's good now.
All right, so we took off that base, or we adjusted for the business tax credit. We took off the base value, and the base value in this scenario would mean that, you can't just say, well, it was at 0, because it has already grown in taxable valuation. So the entity of the school district and the county still get their taxation on base value, which is 3 to 4 years of 5% increments in taxable valuation due to, the layout of these wind turbines. So we come up with a new increment. We take that times your TIF tax rate of about $28.09. So we estimate that over the life of the remaining wind turbines, this new wind turbine farm, and this is where I want to be very clear. The new wind turbine farm has already started. We estimate the life of wind turbines to be approximately 20 years. That new wind turbine farm has started. You have the ability to collect TIF for up to 20 years. But in this situation, I think we limit it to that 16, 17-year window of collections, because if at the 20 years, that wind turbine is either not functional or needs to have some sort of complete redo to it, we're not sure. That could adjust the valuation, correct? I think that you guys are dealing with that right now on some of your older turbines, and so we don't really want to put it in a situation where we're expecting those last 3 or 4 years of collection, and they may not actually be there, but we've got debt that needs to be paid, right? So I guess I erred a little bit on the conservative side of things, and said, okay, if we only issued, let's say, like a 16, 17-year debt, how much would we be able to collect? And the collection amount off that, like 16 to 17 years, is about $6,044,000 in total. And so when we throw that into a bond sale and limit the amount per year that you can pay back with those estimated turbine receipts, we show that you could pay about a $4.1 million bond issue back. And as I understand it, this is a little bit smaller of a turbine farm. It's I think only like 23 turbines maybe. And so, $4.1 million is a great amount of bonds to issue. That takes you up to about total principal and interest at what we estimate about a 4.5% interest rate. That takes you up to about $5,906,000 in total principal and interest. Now, again, we could come back later and you could issue more debt against these turbines if for some reason the valuation went up on them, or something was done that we recognize that those last 3 years could be collected upon, and because the TIF district will give you 20 years, I just don't know that we should do a 20-year bond issue, and not anticipate that you might have to pay those last debt services with your debt service levy. I'm not sure that that's, something that you want to commit to right now. So out of a $4.1 million bond issue, you would be looking at potentially collecting about $4,020,000 of that for your purposes. You know, you've got probably between $60,000 and $80,000 on $4 million of cost of issuance. Now, if we combine this $4 million with the other $6 million, and we do two breakout schedules where the $6 million that we already talked about gets its own breakout schedule. We sell the bonds together, but really what it looks like is the debt is front-loaded because that has a much faster repayment. And then this other side is this $4.1 million debt. We can do that, and that will save you on cost of issuance, right? That would be a savings of cost of issuance, meaning that you don't have to pay a rating agency twice, you don't pay SPEAR twice, you don't pay bond counsel twice, things like that. If we do the bond issues completely separate at different time periods, then you would have those two sets of cost of issuance. And so I think timing-wise, that's what we need to talk about. The timeline that we had given you originally for the $6 million would still work for this additional $4 million. And again, we're looking at probably issuing like 10.2, 10.3, it could be even less than that. You know, if you say, no, we don't want to issue all $4 million, we don't have projects for, that extra $4 million, et cetera. But the big thing we have to start with first is updating the urban renewal plan or adding a separate urban renewal area for these other 23 wind turbines. We have to update the plan for the existing turbines to add in this new debt. We'd have to set up a plan around those existing turbines. And that part of it is going to take anywhere from, 45 to 60, 70 days. So that could be started in June. It could be started in July. And you could still sell bonds like in the October timeframe if that work was started in the early summer months. If you wanted money sooner than that, if you wanted money in the August timeframe or the September timeframe, then we absolutely could, speed that up and get started in May and June and things like that. That really is on your end. What I want to talk to you about is from the day that you get the money, because this will be such a large amount, $6 million on the existing, potentially $4 million on the new TIF area. The size of this bond, if you were to do them together or even separate but in the same calendar year, you will exceed what they call the arbitrage calculation or the arbitrage amount. You'll exceed the small issuer exception, which just means that these bonds will be subject to arbitrage. And for anybody who doesn't know what arbitrage is you are borrowing bonds at a tax-exempt rate. So the federal government says, that's great. We are allowing you to borrow bonds at a tax-exempt rate of maybe 4.5. But the day that Carla gets that money in, maybe her and the treasurer sit down and say, okay, but we're going to invest that money at 5% because that's what we can get on a CD right now, or we can get, we can invest these dollars until we need to spend them, right? We can't invest them for 12 months or 18 months because we're going to need to spend them, but they may be able to invest for 5 months and 3 months and do some laddering of some different investments. The federal government says, that's fine. But if you don't spend the money in about a 24 to 36 month period from the day that you get it, you may owe us back arbitrage, meaning that if you invested the money at more than what you're paying on the interest rate and you didn't spend the money, you're going to owe us money back because you can't borrow our money at a cheap rate, or you can't borrow money at a cheap rate because of us and then make money on it. So I think the biggest thing is for the board to tell me, to tell Carla, if we were to do all of this work and get you money, say in August or September, do you really think you could spend this money in the next 24 months? Are these projects that are shovel ready and could be done fairly quickly so that we're meeting all of the arbitrage, requirements and that? Because I'm going to say that nobody wants to put on their agenda a bill pay to the federal government for a rebate check, right? I mean, you can do it, but nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to explain that to the public as to why you're rebating money back to the federal government.
So Maggie, my first question to you, and there's a lot of sheets we have in front of us. I just wanted to make sure the Great Plains has the 10% rollback on it figured in.
Yes, correct. Yes, it does. Because what we're doing is correct. So what we're doing is there's the amount, and then there's the 10% rollback, but then there's that estimated, we have the business tax credit portion, and then there's the business tax credit portion. And the county assessor, like I said, did a wonderful job of like giving me a calculation on that, because remember, anything that's valued over that $500,000 automatically now qualifies for that business tax credit moving into the new fiscal year, which means the first, 500,000 is at a residential rollback, and then the remaining, the first 150,000, right? I'm sorry, I'm confusing my numbers there, but there's part of all these commercial properties will get a residential rollback for the first few thousand, and then the rest of it will be at that 90%. And so we've taken into that account, which actually is a little bit more conservative than just a straight 90%, because it just reduces the amount of taxable valuation there really is.
So it's not a simple 10%.
It's not a simple 10%, and Carla might be able to give you more details on that, but that's a new rule that everybody, you don't have to register or apply for the business tax credit. All commercial properties that are above, I believe, $500,000 automatically qualify for that.
It's the first 150.
Right. Gets residential rollback. So if I had $1 million building, the first 150 is going to pay taxes at a residential rate of 46%. And then the other, 850 that remains is going to pay at the 90%, which is interesting for you because you're right. It's just more conservative. There's just less taxable valuation, not getting into your budget, but that's maybe why you didn't see as large of a growth in your taxable valuation. That residential rollback is pretty steep this coming year.
So, to the board, general election this year, we're going to do this. I want to start earlier because I don't want to be doing anything in June, and I don't want to be doing anything in November. Or October.
Right. And back to the county engineer, are you confident that any or all of this could be spent in that 24 to 36 month timeline?
Yes.
Okay, so what's the difference between 24 and 36 months? Why isn't it a definitive 24 months?
So, yeah, it gives you spend down exceptions, meaning you don't have to rebate things back if you spend it in these. And you will have to choose at the time of the bond sale. Bond counsel will ask you this question. It'll say, we'll spend the money. I mean, some cities, counties will say, we can spend the money in 12 months because the project's like ongoing right now. It's maybe already started, something like that. Or, it's going to start the day they get the money. So then that means no rebate. If it's 24 months, then it's a definitive 24 months. If it's 36 months, it's a definitive 36 months. And again, those are all, it's in the exception date. So again, we just are wanting you to hit either that 24 or that 36-month window. We assume it's not going to happen in 12 months because we are a state that has seasons, right? We have rainy seasons like right now, and we have, snow and ice in the wintertime. And so we assume that either hitting the 24 months or making sure that you hit the 36 months, you should not have to rebate anything back. Again, you might be able to invest at a rate higher. You might not be able to. We anticipate that interest rates could go down slightly by the time you borrow this money. So then that will be, if interest rates, maybe settle in the 4% range, if they settle in the 4% range, are you still able to get 4 and 5% on the CDs? And we'll take that as it comes. I mean, you're still going to be able to invest them. The calculation is really, did you make money over and above what you're paying in interest? And if yes, if the answer to that is yes, then did you spend that money down, like I said, in that 12, 24, or 36-month window?
So that possible profit and interest could be put towards the projects?
It can be, yes. So that's absolutely the thing is if you make money and it doesn't have to be rebated back to the federal government, then yes, those dollars, those interest income dollars can be put into the project. And most typically they are put into the project fund. Sometimes people will put them into the debt service fund so they can use them to help pay the debt payments. But typically they're put right back into the project fund, because we all know that we say we've got $4.1 million in projects, and it's probably more like 4.2 or 4.3. And, you know, maybe we're going to anticipate there could be a little interest, and hopefully we're hoping that, you know, there could be some change orders downwards, things like that. So.
You guys had any questions on this, comments?
More about Scott and the timeframes.
Yeah. So from a time frame, I mean, what we can do is we can sit down with Carla. It's going to just take some resolutions by your board over the next few months. And those probably, I know, they can all be done at just regular board meetings. We don't have to. So I think it's good for us to sit down with Carla and just say, when would you like to have a call with your bonding attorney first and foremost? Now that call will likely be about an hour long. It will not be like a public meeting setting. But what we will need to do is have probably the engineer on there, because we are going to need the engineer to identify the project. The engineer is probably going to have to identify, you know, where these turbines are, or someone, the county, I mean, if somebody in the county knows where these turbines are, the parcels that they sit on, we're going to have to, because again, this second area, this Mid-America one, we sort of have to build that urban renewal plan, right? Because that plan has not been built yet. So we sort of have to build that plan. So if you're okay with us moving forward, and again, I want to just walk through my numbers one more time with the assessor, with Carla, to make sure that we're all on board, we can move forward. The only other thing I think I want to know is, you know, the $6 million is what we talked about as projects that have already, you know, that you are for projects that are basically finishing up one of the old areas, and this is $4 million. So if you're okay with approximately $10 million in projects, that's what we'll go out and borrow. If you're like, no, we'd only rather borrow, you know, $8 million at this time, we'll do the $6 million for what remains, and we'll only do $2 million of the other, and we could wait, you know, 2 or 3 years and do the other $2 million if that was, you know, your intent.
Well, what's your thoughts?
Oh, I like that she's already being conservative.
Yeah.
I mean,
We don't want to be hung out to dry.
exactly. In those numbers.
But judging by House File 718, this would definitely benefit us budget-wise in that respect. No, it's not, but look at all the improvements we're going to be able to do.
Yeah. Just on the one, there's a 1.8 million in interest.
Doesn't mean that down the road, if things are going well, we can't pay it down. Or at some point, we might be able to refinance like we did last time.
We always said you were going to pay down the 20 million too.
But they keep messing with us too.
Arguing that point, almost to the point where I'd rather let the fecal matter hit the fan.
Well, she had a good suggestion of using the 6 million and only maybe 2 of the new 4.
Yep.
I guess I like that idea.
Yeah. That's a little bit more conservative, and I'm completely fine with that. And the other thing is it then locks in. The whole point of getting something outstanding on those new wind turbines is we've got to stop the base value from getting bigger, right? So if you want to certify something to those new turbines, we've got to do it this December 1, so it sets the base value and locks it in. That way you can accumulate that last like 2 to 3 years of growth on those turbines. And so that, you know, only issuing like the 6 million and then maybe 2 million of the new still means we can go back and issue another 2 million if that looks good going down, but it really solidifies locking in so that you do experience the growth. Because once these turbines grow to that 30%, there's nothing to do. There's nothing to collect and tip, right? And we want to make sure that we're locking it in earlier than later so that we can collect those and do some further analysis. But from our conservative, approach, you could go all the way up to about 4.1. I probably am a little bit more comfortable at only about 2 million. So, between the two, you're at 8 or 8.1 million. 8.1 million.
How would that fit into your numbers, Scott, for projects?
Fine. The last total I gave you was 1.2, I'll call it, and that's within a margin of error. So we can scale up and down by a couple million pretty easy just by reprioritizing.
Right. Okay.
And that deadline is December, right? I mean, that sets those
We have to have everything in place by December.
by December.
By December 1, correct.
December
Well
1.
before that.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Well before.
Yeah. And with the general election before that for Carla's purposes, I completely understand.
Primary and the general.
So
The primary and general, you're correct.
I would like to be more conservative and go with the 2 million on the Great Plains part of it. And
I mean, a conservative would even be the 2.1. There'd still be 2 million.
you got costs involved there, so yeah.
And what we would do is we would set the urban renewal plan up for approximately 5 million, because the plan is just saying, hey, we may borrow 5 million in the future on this. It just says, well, we don't know that we're going to borrow 5 million, but we're telling you we may borrow up to $5 million. We always set that amount higher than what we think we're going to borrow, because again, if the valuation on these turbines changes, or even the valuation on that, the residential valuation changes from 46 back up to, let's say, 54, you will get more valuation because those turbines, that first 150 will get more valuation because the rollback, gains some momentum. So with that, we set the urban renewal plan in place to say we're going to borrow this, but then in your public hearing for the actual borrowing, it would just be the 2 or the 2.1 million that you're talking about. That allows us in the future to go borrow money and not have to amend the urban renewal plan again, as long as all the projects were identified in there. And we'll identify all sorts of projects, whether they get financed with this, 8 million or not. We'd identify everything that we could. That way, then you go 2 years down the road and you say, hey, we're ready to do that other million or million and a half, and we know we've got that ability to do it. Everything is set, and we just have to borrow the money.
All right.
So it would be 2 separate bond issues. It would be a 6 and a 2 or 2.1. Or how do you?
Yeah, it'll be one bond issue, and then it will be 2 separate breakout schedules. So we'll give you a schedule for the 6 million for what is remaining on the existing turbine area, and then we'll give you a separate breakout. If we do 2 bond issues, it will cost you more money, and we're trying to avoid those added costs. So if we do one and then we just break out the schedules, and I can send something up like that per this conversation, just so you can kind of see for yourselves what I'm talking about. Is the people buying the bonds see one schedule, but you and I and Carla see these 2 separate schedules in the background.
Yeah, we'd like to see that.
All right.
Yep, okay.
Well, that's good information. I guess we'll probably start moving that direction that we talked.
Okay. That sounds good. Carla, I will be in touch with you, okay?
Okay.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me this morning. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we're ready to continue.
Maggie Berger has left.
1 minute.
So in about 1 minute, we'll reconvene our drainage hearing for those of you online.
especially when you get your bill. I don't think I want to. We better switch.
So is everything decided out there?
Good discussion.
We'll be ready here in another minute or so.
Maybe after all that out there, they just come in here and say, yeah, well, it's all.
Kind of like the supervisor that you guys should just go over to the bar and decide this.
Yeah.
It's 10:30. Oh.
Dennis Severson
Has joined.
Well, I guess Chris is here to kind of cover until Carla gets back, so we could probably get going on this.
So do you have any additional? So Collins, so we're gonna restart again. Do you have any additional comments before you want people's comments?
And this is a continuance of the DD 89, probably get going on annexation and reclassification reports. We're kind of on the reclassification part of it now.
Yeah, I don't think I have any additional comments. I think we had some discussions out there, but I think we can just continue that now in the hearing setting. So I guess I'll just open it up to comments. Yeah, go ahead.
You'll have to make sure we say our name so we know who we're listening to.
Brian Miller.
Brian
For
Miller.
you folks to consider. If a private person has property in WRP and maintains the residual rights, they have to pay property tax and drainage tax. But the DNR pays no property tax and wants out of 20% possibly. They don't want out. We're working on the issue, do they deserve to be out of 20%?
Carol, app.
If the
Has
private
joined.
person doesn't deserve to be out 20%, they has to pay their fair share for what they chose to do with their land. I could choose to put some of my land in cow pasture, maybe raise the best corn in the world, but I choose to do that. But I still pay my fair share, that was my choice. So if they choose to do what they're doing with their wetland stuff, and nobody forced them to buy the land, why should we change the rules in the middle of the game after 30 years of this?
I guess.
And is it fair to the non-DNR WRP landowners? That needs to be considered, because I'm sure there's plenty of them that are going to get wind of this meeting today.
And I'd say that the thing that really we're stuck with is that code section that says for state-owned wetlands that we can't consider their benefit if they change the land use. So for these, here it was their choice to put it in the wetland, but the code kind of ties our hands specifically for these lands. Now, if it's a private landowner, I can tell you in the past, if they've got a 30-year agreement or some kind of contract agreement, I typically wouldn't consider any sort of a reduction or adjustment. Now, if they had a permanent WRP easement where it can't come out, they kept ownership of the land, I have considered reductions on the reclassification for that. Because there, again, the question is, what is their benefit from the tile system? And there is a benefit there, but it's, again, it's trying to decide, is it reduced as compared to if it's farmland? And if it's gonna be permanently in a wetland, then we would consider a reduction.
So we're not talking 100% of the acres being a pond.
Sure.
Okay, but they're gonna get out of 20% on 100% of the acres, and maybe there's a certain percentage of the land that has to be restored wetlands before it will even qualify for WRP. You know that one?
How much it has to be? No,
Percentage.
I do not.
Well, I don't either, but I know how it works. You have to be able to restore a percentage of wetlands in order to qualify for this government program. So,
Mark Johnson.
so,
I'm sorry, Brian.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think we all kind of get hung up on the code, which I understand the code says that state-owned lands, wetlands, are to get a reduction, but it doesn't quantify what that reduction is. And so, you know, any reduction, you could write a resolution today to lower that assessment by $1. That's a reduction. You know, I don't think that we need to get necessarily hung up on the fact that it is required in the code. And so that's why our argument, I think, is for that 20%. Sure, I understand they have to have some reduction of some sort, but I think it should be a lot less than 20%. Because that 20% certainly isn't spelled out in the code.
Colin, is this code section always been there? Is it a new code section?
Yeah, so it's interesting, actually. I had been communicating with some other drainage engineers that work in the state, and between when we paused the meeting and came back, I checked my phone in between, and I just got an email from Don Etler, who I worked under. He did drainage stuff for 40 years. He said that specific code section about the state-owned wetlands came into effect in 2011. And basically what led up to that, he said, is that there was a 5-island lake, and I don't know in what county. The state of Iowa actually, they objected to the reclassification, and I think it's a lake, but they didn't give any sort of reduction to that, and the state was upset about that. They didn't, according to Don, they didn't get the objection in time to be able to appeal it to district court like you normally would through a drainage district, but it did get the ball rolling on basically changing the law, and that's when that was added. As kind of as a result of that, of what happened there. So then since then,
So the state can make a law that makes it easier for the state to get a reduction, but not for farmers to. I think it's contradicting.
Yeah. We might have mentioned that every last meeting we've had.
Have we brought that up before?
Every day.
Oh.
So, yeah, I don't think it's quite fair that the state is able to pass laws that makes it better for the state and not for the farmers.
Right.
and personally, I would agree with you. I don't I would prefer that that code wasn't in there.
Yeah.
So, but we can create a resolution and pass it that puts more restrictions
On what our
on the state-owned lands. And personally, in my own property, we've had a lot of tree roots, drainage issues that have cost me money, and I'm sure they cost all of you guys money, so I totally get it. I know where you're coming from.
So we belong to IDDA in the county, and the drainage clerks get together a couple times a year. And I think I'll bring this up the next one to see if maybe they can take it to legislation to change the code to the reduction has to be this percent or a specific, or make it more defined. Something so it's easier for engineers, landowners to understand where they're coming from. So I can try and get that ball rolling.
Would that take our ability to change it from a 20% reduction to a 1% reduction?
I don't know if we want to do that, because
Yeah.
we don't want it to end up being a 50% reduction.
I wouldn't say anything.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to run it back up.
Yeah.
Well, you don't trust them.
But the IDDA, I mean, they have different, the drainage law is different.
The problem with the IDDA, not the IDDA, problem with the legislature is that they're still the legislature, and the IDDA is only as good as their lobbyists.
Right.
So,
They've already wrote one thing that'll benefit them, we'll try another one too.
It might be worse off.
Okay, so never mind.
English
Never mind.
It sounds like something we could work with now.
But I would like to have some proposals from people on how we would do the maintenance agreements that have to be set up with those state people on
And that'll
tree
be another
removal.
discussion for another day.
Right, but I'm just saying, we
So currently,
we need
since
to talk
that
about
point of 2014, we have maintenance agreements on every one they added after that, right?
No,
Oh, we didn't?
no, I didn't know that existed, or had forgotten it, and so
But
it's
some
not
of those,
been-
when they developed them, it was required that they had to maintain that area 100 foot from each side of the tile, and
But nobody has a signed agreement with us. So,
it seemed like a lot of words were exchanged, but we don't have an agreement. I thought we did.
well, in DD 89, there's no record in the file.
Well, that one, but I'm talking about other ones that have
Subsequent
been
ones.
developed.
I don't know, I'd have to look at those specific.
And some of these were put in after 2014.
Okay.
One more topic I wanted to touch on, it has nothing to do with this district, but the other problem caused by these WRP issues, especially in areas where there's river bottom, there's beavers moving upstream and causing the drainage districts big money. And I think you folks should consider increasing the bounty on a beaver to $100, like Worth County. Remove the beaver, then remove the dams.
We do that here already.
$100?
Not-
No.
not the 100.
$50.
So you're saying you wouldn't go get one for 50 for a drainage district?
Have you ever trapped one?
I just paid out somebody that got 35 tails. So there's people that will do it for 50.
So until we run out of people to do it, we're probably not going to adjust that.
Yeah.
Well, we give an incentive, because people don't trap everybody.
I actually suggested that a couple years ago because we fight beavers
Oh.
all the time, and it's
I have a place that's not in a drainage district. I've dug them out myself 3 times. Anyway, that's off the track, something to consider and think about in future meetings.
But if we were going to do an agreement with the state properties, that should be part of it, that both trees and.
We never had the issue until this stuff showed up.
Well,
Carol,
that's part about
Abby.
it. We use our tax dollars to buy
Has
it
left.
away from us so we can get tax dollars.
Harlan?
Harlan Nyhus.
we have this resolution in place that requires a maintenance agreement. Do we as a county have any standing to go back to these wetlands that have been put in and say, well, we had this resolution in place, we had these rules in place, and this was not done? Can we as Winnebago County say, we need to have a maintenance agreement on these wetlands, both state, county, and privately held WRP acres, wetlands? Do we have the ability to do that?
Chris, in the past, we have been able to get money or the work out of the state for the most part.
What do you mean?
I'm thinking, what is it, 27 or whatever it is north of Thompson, we continually have problems on. The DNR either comes in with their own contractor or they'll pay somebody locally to do it.
Yes, they've been pretty good lately about taking care of it. Years past, they were not. They didn't have enough funds, they couldn't do it. I believe the gentleman that's helping now has really tried hard to get these wetlands in shape so they can stay on top of it. An agreement would help. I think a topic in the future about this resolution and what it can mean. Possibly go back to the NRCS or the DNR and say, hey, we have this. Would you be willing to sign it now today? It was in place in 14. This is the update. And be willing to sign it. I don't know if it would work.
No, and we've got a current one right now over by Leland that was being repaired. And that one, it's more of a point of, do they want to pay it themselves up front, or do they want us to bill them so that they can pay it out of next year's budget, type of thing.
Right.
So they're working with us on it.
It's good, as much as you can, to get something like a signed thing in place, because you never know when all of a sudden they don't start. All of a sudden they're not working.
Management changes.
Or they say they don't have any.
Retires and
Right, yeah,
Right.
they run out of, that's.
Run out of money is
But there again,
quite an excuse.
or resolution would just reiterate the code because, a code section that talks about willful obstruction would apply to trees blocking a tile. That's what we've
Yeah,
had
and
done
that's,
for years.
so, like today, if in a state-owned wetland, if there was trees that roots plugged up the tile and there was nothing, no agreement in place, I'd still try to get them to pay it. I would, have a letter sent stating that code from an attorney saying, you can't do this, and so you need to take care of this obstruction. But it's still better to try to get something that they sign and you can hold it. It's better yet than to just send a threatening letter and hope this has a little bit more teeth. And this is, a resolution like this is similar to anything else that you want to run through a drainage district. If you want to put like the CO2 pipelines or wind turbines or utility lines and things that cross drainage district infrastructure, the code is real clear that drainage districts have a lot of power. If you want to mess with their stuff, you got to follow the drainage district rules. So there's good, strong.
we were there first.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yep, so you basically, if you want to do something in a drainage district and mess with drainage district facilities, you need permission.
The only one we have real trouble with is the federal government.
Yeah.
Fish and Wildlife.
Yeah.
Do other counties have any resolutions like this that you are aware of?
I do not know. They do. That's something that.
And I can ask other drainage.
And how detailed can we make the resolution?
Or want to.
Or want
So,
to? Yeah.
in working on some of these for different topics in the past, what I've understood is that essentially they can be as detailed as you want. Now, if somebody's got problems with them, and it goes to court, like, oh, this resolution is too far, basically. The goal is to try to be reasonable. So if you put something in there that sort of makes it impossible without reason, then it's not going to hold up. But if it's reasonable stuff, you can be as detailed as you want. If your goal is to protect the drainage district, the drainage rights, the tile, the ditches.
Like when we put the power lines in going across the county towards the north there, every drainage district, they had to have a permit to cross those tiles.
Same sort of deal.
And we made a fee involved there to where it helped cover our administrative costs for that too.
So back to this, what do you guys think a reduction is fair? Like 1%, 10%?
Is it true that Hancock County is zero?
I don't think that is true.
I talked,
Ann told me they.
I talked to the drainage clerk twice.
That's an interesting discussion to have because how these reclassifications work is you have an engineer and you have two disinterested landowners that bring the recommendations and then do a report like this and have a hearing like this. In Hancock County, I talked to the other engineer who does work in Hancock County, and he said that he didn't specifically say that he has or hasn't in Hancock County, but he works in several counties, and he said that he has given reductions in lands like these. It's on a case-by-case basis, basically. I guess, and that maybe isn't even the most important thing, but I don't think when you've got the state law saying what it does, I don't think having a county policy or something to just say we're not going to give any reductions to them for reclassifications, I don't know that that can overrule state law. With that being said, still certainly the board has the discretion to modify this report before approving. So that's still on the table. But as far as what other counties do and policies, I think that's a slippery slope because they're policies, and if we've got state law that's in place now, and that's how the basis for what we did here. It's hard to just say, well, other counties don't do it, so we won't. You can, but I think you just gotta think it through before doing it. I don't know that you can say that Hancock County never has done it, but because the engineer that works there has done it before, maybe not in Hancock County, but he's given reductions to state-owned wetlands.
That depends on the amount of property they own in the drainage district. They own
That's
a couple acres, it's no big deal.
You do make a fair point. This really brings the whole issue to a head because it's a third of the drainage district. I don't know where else you could find that where a third of the district is publicly owned ground. I've never seen it.
And it has the potential to grow even bigger. Then what?
If this, whatever is in place, obviously if more lands in this district go into wetlands, it doesn't mean you gotta come back and do reclassification to give them a reduction or anything like that. This is just a snapshot in time. So we're stuck with what we see today.
Well, the way to get an attention to an issue like this, people that make our laws down in the state, is to don't give them a break at all, or make it 1% or something like that.
Look at the property tax we're missing. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but look at the property taxes that we're absorbing because of this particular drainage district.
They know they're gonna have to pay all of their drainage, and maybe that'll be a little less incentive for them to go around buying up all of our land. I mean,
Like I was saying before, though, is you give them a 1%, then do they go back to session and go, okay, they're gonna go 50%,
well,
and make it a
when they
law.
start doing that stuff, they might not get themselves reelected if we pay enough attention.
And that's,
I
that's.
mean, we've been on that
what it
page for
is,
quite a
too.
while here about wondering what the heck our legislatures are up to. Because they're by leaps and bounds are taking authority away from county supervisors. They want to control, they want to concentrate the power in Des Moines. And pretty soon, we'll just be figureheads. But,
The only other thing that, so if, basically with a report like this, any landowner in the district, after its action is taken on it, like if it's approved, and whether or not there's a reduction or not, anybody has the right to appeal that to district court. So that's the only, and is the state gonna do that? I don't know. But that's the only other thing to consider.
If they were really concerned about their assessment, they would be here today, do something here.
Or we can just overturn it and leave it like it was.
What'd you say, Brian?
Or we can just overturn this thing and leave it like it was. Supervisors.
Overturn what?
I think he's suggesting that we reject this and throw it.
Oh, reject the whole reclassification and the,
But then you guys all still pay the bill for the work
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, that's not a good idea.
And you still have to pay on all projects in the district, no matter where you are.
No, not just the 20% reduction.
Oh, that part.
I thought you were
misunderstood.
saying.
I'm sorry.
Because then we could even keep those acres way up there in the northwest still in it too.
Yeah, I missed.
You don't want to do that.
Yeah, that would be, if you were getting rid of the reduction, that would be something like the board would just say, we're gonna approve this with that 20% reduction for publicly owned lands removed. And then I go back to the office and recalculate these, and with that reduction removed, and then those numbers.
And then do we have to meet again on that?
Yeah, so that's, it's easier to give people reductions at these hearings. There's a code section, not to keep harping on the code, but if you increase somebody's assessment, which is this, that's what that would do, you have to give them notice. So if we were gonna do that, we'd have to continue this to a later date and then send them.
But we have to anyway because of the annexation. So
Yeah,
we still,
but they would just get a special notice that says notice of increased assessment. Yeah. I get it.
yeah.
But is this resolution countywide? You're affected
So-
by more than just this.
Just to be clear, reclassification is one thing, that resolution, the reclassification is for DD 89, and that is talking about that reduction. The resolution is talking about rules and requirements for wetlands in drainage districts.
In our whole
And it doesn't
county.
talk about the
In the whole
reduction.
county.
In our
For the
whole
whole
county.
county. Yep.
Yeah.
It wouldn't address that 20%.
Otherwise, you'd do this every drainage district that was affected. With WRP, you'd have to.
Right, I think some of these issues I think are best handled in the resolution. The other,
Am I allowed to speak?
Well, you're public.
You're public.
Thank you. As a landowner in both Worth and Winnebago County, I'm affected by numerous drainage districts, laws, regs, everything. The reason I'm here, I'm concerned with the precedent that this might be setting, and then ultimately reviewing all the other drainage districts in the county. And I've been attempting to listen to the meeting, and I'm sorry about, I want to apologize about earlier interrupting, but about 10:30, I think things kind of went chaos, and I dropped signal, and I don't know, whatever.
Oh, we took a break.
Exactly, that's what I could, but I couldn't hear what time you were going to reconvene. And so anyway, I just jumped in my car and came down. So anyway, I did hear though also some comment about the beaver trapping, and I'm gonna share that $100 in my eyes is cheap compared to pulling a beaver dam out with equipment. And I am speaking experience-wise. And they have been, yes, paying out quite a bit of bounty over in Worth County. I guess ultimately that's about all I have to comment on, but I am concerned with the precedent that this 20% is setting.
I've never seen a dead beaver reproduce.
No, but we've got a lot of.
It's an issue.
Yeah, we've got a lot of places there love to build homes over in Worth County. That's what I get.
Charged involved and tracking out a half a mile from the road at 3 miles an hour at $250 an hour. Tracking back. It's a big expense. Unnecessary expense.
Plus where you're limited to the trapping season.
Not only that, the farmer can't farm his land.
Unless they're a nuisance.
If you got water backed up and you
But
don't
they're-
know it when you come to pick your corn and you got 2 feet of water standing in your cornfield, you got a problem. And then we gotta go through this in order to get permission to get it fixed. You've only got so much time in the spring as well. Okay? You find out your tile is plugged to tree roots, we don't have time to have a meeting about it.
Yeah. Well,
They plant corn in 2 weeks.
if Chris wants to do something with her clerks for IDEA, bring something forward, ease up of the waiver process for trapping beavers out of season. So, because the DNR has, carte blanche on, rejecting any out of season stuff, and we need to put more.
I had a landowner get a fee
Ability.
from the state even though he proved it was a nuisance and they didn't agree. And he got a fine on his own land.
It's just more expense that we're having to handle and deal with because of these issues. And do they pay property tax and drainage tax on river bottom WRP? River?
I can't speak to property.
DNR.
I don't think they do, no.
Any drainage tax in a river bottom?
If they're in a district, maybe.
Yeah, if they're not in a drainage district, they're not in a drainage.
But Elk River,
River's not in the drainage district.
Winnebago River.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that's probably
There's no tax.
No.
But yet they're getting income for hunting and fishing, and they're generating income off of that for free, then you might say.
Yep. I do get the point that you made about setting, concern about setting precedent with this. I don't think, it's definitely not the intent to say that this is, 20% is like the de facto number that would just be used by default from now on. There's part of this reclassification. Harlan and I talked about this at length. Somebody else could come in pretty easily with arguments for a different number, and I don't think we're stuck on 20 as the number. I don't think there is a the number. But at the same time, I get the concern about setting a precedent that, okay, you're just gonna do this all across the board, especially even in the resolution, which we talked about county policies. It says in this resolution, the wetland shall retain the classification established by sections 468, 38 through 40. That, the intent of that was, they're not affected by it. Now, was the previous classification changed? No, we're looking at it now, but the state code has kind of forced our hands on looking at it as what's their benefit from the tile as a wetland.
I guess I don't know what else to say about precedent. We're trying to do our best as commissioners for the drainage district to give our recommendations, do our best with our best skill and ability and judgment.
It almost seems like, to me, there's kind of a difference between what their portion should be on repairs and what their portion should be on improvements. I mean, they aren't gonna benefit from the improvements necessarily, but the repairs, they should be a responsible owner on.
Well, if you do improvements, when you do improvements, a lot of those require a reclassification.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that you have to do this is a full-blown district-wide, splitting all the laterals out, reclassification. But the code does talk about if you are above these certain thresholds, which are not very high, and you're doing an improvement, you have to do a classification. It's essentially, it's a good idea. If you're doing something, you want to make sure that project, the right people are paying the right amounts. You don't just use the old schedule and assume that is appropriate for this new improvement that you're doing. So that would kind of, this is mostly meant for future maintenance.
So you can do a separate schedule just for that improvement?
You can do one-time schedules that you use to pay for an improvement, and then it's gone, and you have a future maintenance schedule as a separate schedule. Here, we didn't do an improvement. We didn't do any major work in the district, so these are all essentially intended to be future maintenance schedules. And they also help, if somebody wants to do an improvement, to be a basis for that remonstrance, to decide if we do it. Because right now, it's the whole district decides on everything. But these we've got it split out into smaller chunks. So if somebody wants to do an improvement on a lateral, only the people that are affected by that would be invited to the meetings and really have a say as far as remonstrance goes. So it helps that way too. Yeah.
So where are we at?
Where are you at?
I'd say set it at 0 and see if they want to fight it. And you can negotiate.
This way you get, it's kind of like.
I agree.
Craig? So we, us in Sioux County just decided not to send our money so we could get some response and try to get out of the region we were in.
Under the Code of Iowa, Chapter 468, the County Board of Supervisors act as drainage trustees for all drainage district matters.
Of theirs, not the private ones.
And then when you go to the code section about local control,
That's swear words.
Well, yeah.
it says, for the Iowa Constitution, it talks about according to the Iowa Constitution, local governments in Iowa are granted home rule powers unless their policies are inconsistent with state law.
Well, I think we have a lot more power than they try to intimidate us into thinking we don't have.
But that's why I said, when you go to the Iowa, when you go to local control of the drainage districts, it says that the supervisors have the control of the drainage districts. So how can the state give us a law that mandates what we do with the drainage districts?
But they're just acting as trustees for the district. They're not acting as their supervisor role in drainage.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying, how can the state give us a law that requires us to do something with the districts?
The state set up the whole structure for the creation of drainage districts through state law. So they kind of, they're tied together sort of through that. I get where you're coming from. And the only reason that for this that they have any say is that they're a landowner in the district. So we're doing a reclassification, so they have the same rights that any other landowner in the district has. Appeal rights, not required to be notified, they're all treated the same.
But they haven't responded to any of this.
Would any, if this whole public ground was private ground in the same drainage district, would 20% apply to the private owner?
If it's permanent.
That's what I would say, yeah. If it's permanent, we would consider a reduction, but if it's not permanent, then I wouldn't recommend any sort of reduction, because it could go back into farmland.
99-year easement.
For the permanent ones?
For the ones that maintain ownership, it's a 99-year easement.
Really?
It's supposed to expire after 99 years, unless you sell the residual rights to the state or the county.
I thought it was into perpetuity. No, that was 99 years.
There used to be a choice of a 75%, which was 75 years, or a 99. And the cost that they paid you was less for 75 years.
So hopefully relatives of people that have that understand that in the future.
Say, could I talk a little bit here? This is Tom Brackey.
Go ahead, Tom.
Okay. I had a bunch of ground, a few hundred acres there by the airport, Forest City there, and they put it in the WRP, and the property taxes on that for Hancock County, they would not lower them at all, and they still will not. We went to court twice on it, and they will not lower them. They are considering that as prime farm ground. And you know the residual value on it is what, $1,200-1,500 for WRP, and the ground, I mean, they wouldn't do it. So there's a prime example. The law states, you know, you shouldn't be taxed more than what the ground will produce or what its value. And they are not abiding by the laws. And I know you up there in Winnebago County, you have a lower rate for WRP. You don't tax them the full boat like it's farm ground. So what I'm saying there is you don't have to go by what, you know, I hate attacking Colin all the time. But, I mean, he's not an attorney. He's just, you know, giving you his view. And he keeps talking about benefit. Benefit on this land, the state land. Well, if there was no benefit, why did they buy it? Why did they buy it? You know, because it was in the drainage district. It should stay in the drainage district, the full amount. I would not drop the rate at all, because it's going to be nothing but problems when those tiles start plugging, and they need to pay their fair share. I don't know what else I can say. It's not right to give them a break, because they're benefiting from it totally. If they're not benefiting from it, why do they have intakes out there? That's what I'd like to know. You know, somehow they feel that that's going to benefit them, you know, tapping into that tile with intakes. And when those ponds are clear full in the spring, when we need the tile to work, they're dumping just as much water in there when we get a 2, 3, 4-inch rain in those intakes as everybody else. So I don't feel that they should have a break at all, and I think you should just reject this 20% and just see how the chips fall. Because I know when this tile, it's just a matter of time before that tile's plugged with all them trees. And Colin, when you go out and you look maybe this afternoon if you have time, you'll see how much vegetation and trees and willows are growing up over that tile. And I'm up above it, so I'm going to be, you know, with no outlet at all. And what is my, what do I do then? I come in and I complain, and it takes, you know, 4, 5, 6 years, and then so they'll say, yeah, we're going to fix it. How are you going to get someone out there with a tractor or something into that swamp and fix a tile? It ain't going to happen. So I've lost my outlet. So then if I have no outlet, am I just kicked out of the drainage district and I don't have to pay anything if I have no outlet? I mean, you're opening up a big can of worms. You know, you give them a break, and then the next person's going to want a break, and it just, I think you're ending up going to be in a lot of court battles and stuff, and it's no fun to go to court. Nobody wins but the lawyers. So that's about all I got to say. I just hope you don't give the 20%. Just leave it how it is, and they should pay their fair share. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Well, I think we're down to, do we want to do this today before we finish the annexation, or is this, could we do the reclassification part before the annexation?
I think you could decide what you want to do with the reclass, and then when the annexation part gets fixed,
Then he
that will all
reschedules it.
follow in together, so we'll have a
He'll have those
complete
numbers to work
annexation
with
and then a
then.
complete reclass. Yeah.
I think that'll work well because you basically, I want you to decide something today because we have to, if you're gonna do that, that's what I
You
need.
need your calculation numbers.
I can calculate that stuff, but we also have, before final action can be taken, we do have to send those notice of increased assessments out to these properties. And so if we didn't do that today, and then we came back later, then we'd still have to do that before we can finally approve it. So we don't need to have.
So we're kind of down to us.
Oh, I made up my mind on this a long time ago.
Where are you at?
No, nothing, no 20%.
I have a fear of going anything zero with conflict with code, but I'd like to see 1% so it's less challengeable.
One point I'll just make is that you're not making a final decision today because basically you can say this is what we want, but we can't take final action on it until those notices of increased assessment are sent out, and then there's a hearing to talk about that where they have an opportunity to come back and say something different. And that's when but no, that's a good point. If we changed it again and it increased it, then
It's
have to
another
send it again.
process. Yeah.
So,
How much
yeah,
would a
sorry.
point, how much would a 0.5 be?
0.5%.
Yeah,
0.5%?
yeah.
What do you mean, how much would it?
Like if we just did a 0.5% versus 1%
Versus 20%.
versus 20%.
I'm just trying to go by code by doing some percentage, whether it's minimal or not.
Plus they'll volunteer to plug their intakes.
Couldn't you just do $1 and say you
No,
use
because
the
it's a percentage in there.
We've got this set up in these dollars map, it's based on 100,000, but that's just an arbitrary number to make it look like dollars, so it's easier to understand.
And everybody has a percent.
Yeah, everybody pays a certain percentage.
And this is perforated tile running through this, right?
I think they probably,
Well, and when they put in that wetland, everybody got brand new tile that they didn't have to pay for. You know, the NRCS and everybody.
but when
put
they
in
have
brand new
trees
tile.
growing over it, it really doesn't matter if it's solid tile or not, it's gonna get in there.
Right, right.
And when it comes to the tree thing, I don't care if it's a private landowner, or nobody else should have to pay for someone else's responsibility.
And if it's on their land, they would pay for it, and the other
Well, we
landowners
went through
wouldn't.
that with the county conservation, with Guam
They
Wildlife.
paid it.
Yeah.
And we're dealing
If
with
they
it.
didn't maintain their trees, they should pay for it. Why should anybody else care?
Last year, we were dealing with it down at,
I know, yeah.
we had a private landowner just outside Pilot Town. I don't know if that's done.
They didn't know this 30 years ago when this started, but why should we have to pay for their bad decision 30 years ago? Now it's starting to flare up.
It's one of my favorite things, paying for other people's bad decisions.
We're taxed
Well,
enough.
they are seeing a benefit. Otherwise, why would they even want the land? And I'm not even saying that it's drainage benefit.
Definition of
It's
benefit is drainage
wildlife,
benefit?
it's
Yeah, so that's
nature
different.
conservation, it's, you know,
Bring
there's,
waterfall into the area.
Yeah, no,
We used to have waterfall. This whole
so
thing
there's
started
definitely benefits.
But it's not drainage benefit.
It's not
benefit
drainage.
is waterfall.
There is two drainage benefits, or why would they be putting intakes by their dam? Why wouldn't it be non-perf all the way through if there's no benefits? That's my big problem, my hang-up. Sorry to interrupt, but it's tough on the phone.
If it was non-perforated all the way through and they had no intakes, you'd almost.
That would be a different story.
So can we,
They're after a certain depth of water. They don't want too much because they don't want a lake. They want vegetation for nesting areas for waterfowl. That's the point with the wetland. They don't want it for deer or pheasants. They want it for waterfowl.
so can we come to an agreement on what that percentage is?
And that's why Ducks Unlimited is a major contributor to the wetland restoration. And I'm gonna hold my tongue on the rest of that.
I quit going to the geobanks.
You could, if you're in agreement that you want to do a lesser reduction, then you know that they're gonna have increased assessments, we don't have to tell them what they are, well, but we wanna bring the numbers. Yeah. Yeah, it'd be best if you could decide today.
Yeah, I think we should come up
I
with
think
that.
we should come up with a number that sends a message, that definitely sends a message, but I don't think it should be 0.
Okay, 0.5.
And an agreement with all of these people that they'll come with us to district court when they take it.
Are you okay with 0.5 then, Sue?
Either 0.5 or 1.
Okay, so what do we need to do? Should there be a motion in the next subject when we approve but alter the reclassification?
You have the code section up, Carla.
I don't, but if you tell me what it is, I can pull it up.
Can you do a word search in the code, just say like, increased assessment? There should be a code section that comes up that hopefully will help, but I haven't had a lot of experience with doing the increased assessment thing. It's like
I didn't know if we had to do action here or we just emphasize that we would only agree to 0.5% when it's time to finalize it.
Right, Colin, what would you do if it was a reduction? If, instead of an increase, so what?
We approve the report with XYZ reductions.
And then what would happen?
That'd be the end.
Because I know that one time, Susan, before you were supervisor, we changed a classification because she actually had her tile records that she tiled out of the district.
That was the annexation, or did we do it through annexation or reclassification?
It was during the time. So what we did was, the engineer went back, made those changes, and we continued the hearing to a certain date, and then we came back and then it was approved.
With the recalculation.
With the recalculations, yeah. But we didn't send a letter of increase to everybody else.
Yeah, so
That was
interesting point.
But
I don't know that we
feel-
need to go into all that today, but if we've done reductions, I get that it's, if you have $1,000 bill and you reduce somebody and everybody else is gonna pay more, but that's, we're reducing the benefit. So if we reduce the benefit of somebody, it's not really increasing the benefit of somebody else. So we haven't done that process for reduction. It's been, if there's a reduction, you can just do it at the hearing and it's over.
So can we, at this, for this one, they say they approve, we're gonna change it from 20 to this. We're going to continue the hearing anyway because of the annexation, so letters are gonna have to go out anyway, because now that person may not be part of the district. So we have to continue it anyway. I have to send a letter to everyone anyway. Can they just do that, where they say we want this percentage instead of the 20? You do your thing, and then we just have the hearings again.
I think you'd have to at least say that we're planning on increasing their assessment. If we're gonna do that, we have to send out these notices to them.
But I am going to send out a notice to have another,
But
to have
it's
another
gotta be a
hearing.
specific notice of increased assessment.
Oh, okay.
We haven't approved their decrease yet, though, have we?
But they've seen numbers at that rate.
Those have been noted, those have been published and
Published.
noticed
Yeah.
and. So basically, if you're gonna, if that's what they thought the numbers were and then they're happy with them, and then all of a sudden at the hearing, they didn't go to it because they didn't think they needed to, and then it got up without them knowing, they didn't get a chance to really say, well, no, it shouldn't be. That's the thought behind that.
So the letter.
So how
can
did this
state-
20% come about?
Tom, were you, have you been on the phone the whole time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
We kinda explained it.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is he's saying it's already, you know, pretty much set in stone, the 20%, unless the board here, you know, goes against it.
That was a
How did that
recommendation of
20%
the
just get thrown on there?
The commission with the engineer came up with that number.
Yes.
So
Okay,
that's a starting.
so that was Collins doing, right?
Well, Colin and 2 commissioners.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's how it came,
And the
but
two
that's,
commissioners came up with that amount, and Colin said okay. Because he actually started out with a higher amount, and then came down, and the two other commissioners, because I was in on that meeting, agreed to go lower, and they thought that would be a good number, knowing that
Okay.
the supervisors have a chance to change that.
Okay. I just don't want to see this end up like over there by Hanlontown when they put in that big giant dredge ditch over there, and the one guy ended up losing his farm over a deal like this. I mean, it's all great now because we have small bills and just fixing and repairing this drainage district. But what happens, you know, if things go south and we end up with a, you know, $1 million bill to put in a giant, you know, like we went through here with Johnson's land. You know, and then all of a sudden you're going to have so many people wanting to see the benefits. You're going to end up in court all the time. I mean, I'm not, you know, I've got a couple of little single lines that go up into that farm of Riley's there, of Diane's. There's no laterals on it with like a little 4 or 5 inch intake. And I feel like that state ground is utilizing that tile just as much as I am with their intakes on the dams. And then all of a sudden you're giving somebody a break. You know, you're talking about this 1%, 0.5%. That just opens up the window for everybody else to come in and say, well, how much am I actually benefiting? I just want you to be aware of that. You know, it's all great now when we don't have no big bills, but all of a sudden you start laying big, huge bill on somebody, on these landowners. They're going to want to know their benefit. You know, it's going to be on a percentage, and you're just opening up a big can of worms, I'm afraid.
So does anybody else in this district have a benefit reduction that's higher than 20%?
Timberland.
Okay.
who owns those?
Jane Benson.
Okay.
So what are the other reduction percentages maybe?
That was 30%.
Right, but what are some other, is there other? Okay.
Because again,
Right, with the timberland, it said that was actually probably going to absorb more water.
Yeah.
well, if you've driven by there, it's like these.
It's timber.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really rough ground. That's trees.
Non-productive, other than trees.
So as far as benefit from the drainage district tile, it's less than if, you know, all other things equal. That's this reduction. It's not just a blank rate. It's all other things equal. We're looking at a lot of factors. So it's just like, oh, well, our factors that we have didn't account for this, so we're having a separate factor to make an adjustment.
So going back to my original question, what do we have to do to move forward?
To me, it looks like continue the hearing to
With an intent to recalculate at, say, 0.5% reduction instead? Or do we have to?
I think that's your choice.
I mean, do we have to motion it, or do?
You would need to make a motion to continue the hearing,
Right.
because you want to really today, I want you to set the time and date.
Right, right.
For the continued hearing. How you want to handle that increased assessment thing, I think is up to you. If you want to set a number now.
Can it be part of the setting the hearing with the intent to increase the assessment or reduce the benefits reduction to, like, say, 0.5%, all part of the same motion in the continuance and set the hearing?
I don't see any problem with that.
At least we've identified it, it describes it, gives you a number to calculate, and that probably would be upon your work on annexation parcels. You would just go ahead and do that. We would give you for your calculations. Should that be part of the motion also? With possible adjustments to the annexation.
Yeah.
What about time period? For how many years? You know, costs are gonna continue to go up.
The reclass
What do you
is
mean?
good for 100 years.
Until it changes again.
Until it
Good
changes.
until you do it again.
Yep.
Good until you do it again.
Yeah.
I want to get it right.
It's kind of like the legislature. They set the rules until they change the rules.
Yeah, and just remember, it's a lot easier to control dozens of legislators than it is hundreds of supervisors. So when you talk to your legislators, you let them know.
Okay, so let's talk about timeline here. When do we want to do this?
Well, based on Colin when he thinks that could be done, because he's got to do work with Mr. Brackey and get that done, and
It may be simple today if it looks obvious. Otherwise, he needs to get together with him probably.
I mean, I don't have a problem with being ready. Next Tuesday.
hey, Tom, are you still on there?
Yep.
Do you want to wait for 2 weeks so you can be present? So
Yeah, that would be great.
that would
2 weeks would be great. Then I know I'll be home for sure.
Does that work for you, Colin?
So that would be the April 16th if you're available.
Carla, can you look at the agenda? I know there's already stuff on there.
Would you mind if I make a call to check? I don't have my calendar tied into my phone.
But you do that quick and we'll figure that out. What do we have on the 16th?
The budget hearing, I know is at 9, but I don't know if there was something else. I don't remember.
Yeah, I just have the budget hearing at 9.
But we can, do it at 10 o'clock or something and
Well, we could do 9:30 and
9:30,
have nothing after it.
Grilled hamburgers.
so call. So your motion would be to
Yeah, would you guys be in the field then?
continue.
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to interrupt that either. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I
Nature
don't.
does, yeah.
It's a matter of.
Annexation
Yeah, I asked a question
classification
about
hearings.
with the intent.
So it'd be all on there.
I'm just gonna make a general statement about it. We had a Board of Adjustment zoning hearing, that it was published in the March 13th paper, and I didn't even get this thing until the 15th, and the hearing was the 20th already. And I'm just saying that, boy, those 4 days sure went quick from the publication until, it really just wasn't much. And this is the graphic, and I know the same thing was in the Tribune. And I don't know who set that date, but anyway. And if you want to look at my copy, that's fine. But really wasn't very much notice.
Was Matt set those?
I don't know.
He puts it in our zoning administrator, which evidently he must have a smaller window to set a hearing than what we do.
Different things have a different, time frame.
Different times.
You know, you have to publish it 10 to 20 days
They're
or.
either 4 and 20 or 10 and 20. So it depends on,
You could have went with 4 if you wanted to.
I don't know. I don't know what his zoning.
Maybe in the future, we should tell him, you should put it out at least 10 days.
Possibly
give people, because you know, yeah.
I'm just
the
saying-
papers will come out once a week.
Exactly, we're dealing with a weekly paper, and I'm just saying that I know there were other people that
Reduce
said,
public
hey,
land
that's really
reduction
short
to
notice.
0.5%, or
And I'm
just
like,
to
it
set
is what it is.
public land reduction, to set.
That's all I can share, but,
Land.
I mean, if you wanna see what I received and how I was notified, or how I knew there was a hearing, this was with regard to, the Met Tower, at
Possibly.
400 and 200. And,
Reduce annexations
I don't know.
according to
Okay, so,
work by the engineer going forward.
so what Colin was looking at is that increased notice, it has to be 20 days. So we would have to go at least 3 weeks, which would be the 23rd of April, which Colin is available the 23rd. He is not available the 16th. I can get those letters out again today with that verbiage. Colin and I will work on that, get those letters out. So does the 23rd work?
Have a 9 o'clock on that day.
Yeah, so as long as it's raining.
But if you can, at least get to the website to look at it, come in and look at the report, you know, there's ways to find that. And I make sure that Tom had it as far as the annexation, because none of the other annexation people said anything, so they must have been in agreement with it. Well, hopefully they
got
will.
notice.
Yeah, they got notice. Oh, yeah.
Usually
They
it's
all got
fairly
notice.
obvious. In this case, it was fairly quite so obvious.
Yeah. So the 23rd is fine.
At 9:30, well, I don't know, we probably better give 9:45 if we got that public,
I mean, we could,
9:30?
it's just for that road.
Yeah. It's a perfunctory thing for a 5-year plan on DOT.
So it's up to you guys.
If it's, the farmers, do you wanna do 8:30? Would you rather do earlier?
If we're gonna do earlier, you probably better give it some time. We've already set 9 o'clock for the one.
I'm into it.
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
But we could
Let's
do,
just
I
do
mean, we could do 9:30, that's
Well, is there
fine.
gonna be any debate on this? Is this gonna be?
The debate will probably come from the other side that we are increasing.
They'll have an opportunity anyway.
That'll be their opportunity to,
And you can compare your own parcels with what is in there now to what would be future, one that we're gonna approve, to know what you think about that.
Make 8:30, they gotta leave earlier.
Right now, it's at 0.5%.
Right.
I'm fine with that.
Ready for a motion?
yeah, okay, so we're gonna make a motion.
Hold on, you gotta close the public hearing first.
Oh, that's right, we're not up to that subject yet. So, would you like to close the public hearing now?
I'd like to close this public hearing. That would be my motion.
I will second it.
Okay, I've got a motion from Smith and a second from Jensvold to close the public hearing. All those,
Discussion?
any discussion?
Is there any, we're gonna,
Oh, you're gonna continue.
I'm gonna make a motion in about 1 minute.
To continue.
To continue the public
You can't
hearing.
close it if you're gonna continue it.
So that's the discussion.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so this motion is for, instead of closing.
So we're gonna continue the public hearing.
So,
I apologize.
let me start over.
Okay.
Okay.
So should those other things be part of that continuance? Because they're actually part of the next subject.
I think the whole thing should be, let me just say it, and if you don't like it, because we didn't vote on
Okay, I
it.
just have a quick question before that. You're not really increasing anybody else's benefit, you're just reducing the one.
Reducing the reduction.
Reducing a reduction, yeah, it's
Yeah.
an increase.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's increasing everybody else's benefit
No,
amount?
no, it's just the state-owned, well, county-owned ground.
So it would just be the letter to The DNR
Yeah.
State of Iowa and the county.
and the county.
Everyone.
So I don't have to send them to
correct.
everyone.
Yep.
Okay.
That's correct.
I thought I was gonna send them to everyone.
But
My
if they want to
apologies.
see what the number changes are going to be,
They
they can
can,
look it up.
okay.
What about the property held by the Iowa Heritage Foundation? Are they paying tax?
Is
I
that,
think we have them on.
We don't have any, but
Yeah, that's a different story.
That's another
if
discussion.
that, if that comes up in a situation,
is it permanent land though?
it will be. I mean, in the future.
Yeah. We can't worry about that one right now.
Okay, because eventually it will be added, whatever.
So we may have to look at reclassification there too. Well, no, it'll already be at the full, so they'd have to request a reclassification to get it lower. No, it stayed.
Let's try for a motion.
Just, what's your draft?
Here we go. So I would like to make a motion for April 23rd at 9:30 to continue the public hearing on DD 89 annexation and classification with intent to possibly set public land reductions at 0.5%.
And then the possibly decreasing
And possibly
annexation numbers.
reduce annexations.
Proposed annexations,
Proposed annexations.
according to what the engineer comes up with verification.
Did you get that, Carla?
It's on a recording.
She's got a photographic memory.
I don't know if we have to put that in with that end part. I think really just possibly reduce annexation.
It might not be word for word, but we'll get something in there.
Yep.
I'll second that motion.
I'll second that.
So, on a motion from Smith and a second from to continue the hearing with the intent to possibly set public land reduction at 0.5% and possible decreases in annexation according to engineers' recommendations. That was by Smith, seconded by Derby. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We could have done it at 2 o'clock in the morning like legislature.
Yeah, it's down to multi-thousand page bill, 2 in the morning, and they gotta vote on it the next morning.
Okay, we still have the county claims to finalize.
Yeah, did you want to go back to his
Well, while we're
discussion?
working
Dennis
claims,
Severson.
he can be asking her questions.
Oh, because you just want to ask Carla?
Has left.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
We have the claims in.
That's it. Come back next week. I know it, here we go again.
Thanks for your input, everyone.
Thank you.
Come again when you hopefully don't have to stay so long. Come again when you hopefully don't have to stay so long.
Thanks for coming and spending the day.
Should have served them lunch.
Right. It's dimes.
No.
What do you think? What questions do you have for me?
You can sit over there. Someone yell over me.
Aren't you gonna take me?
Tom Brackey.
Has left.
Did you clear Tom?
Yeah, he's done.
Cause they know you did it.
I'm sorry.
He's not stamped yet.
Still.
I just wanted to see him.
Sign. You have to sign too.
Okay.
The complication of it. But then I'm looking at here and
I'm carried away there. Wanted to go on that power control thing, there's 2 stamps on that one.
We'll ask, we'll talk to Matt about it, that it seemed like a little bit of a short.
But I know that there's a time frame. I think it might be the 4 and 10 where it can't be any more than 10 and not less than 4 or something. There's a range.
The Northwood paper does such a great job of covering county business. It really does.
I get the anchor too. I was like, yeah, they're right on it.
Always.
We do not have to say in this county. comparing apples to apples by any.
I know.
A couple of people had indicated to me that they had heard about it.
No, there's no tip.
I know. Thanks, Carol, for coming in.
Did you have any questions on the claims?
Well, we do have tips.
Oh,
but not.
I didn't.
Not in there.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We've got a motion from Jensvold and a second from Smith to approve the county claims. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Is this the budget? What's the county's budget?
That's the school.
So there's your budget.
That's the countywide thing.
So those two numbers give us the total budget.
That's just for those two funds. There's the one,
So what's your total
Again this week?
She missed Rotary last time.
Yeah, I didn't get to eat last week. They had the food put away by the time I got there.
How often a month do they have it?
What, Rotary?
Every
Every week.
You don't have
They
to
did
take
pretty good. I've been to
This stupid AI crap, I wish it'd go away. Cause it screws up all my.
Okay, so I think we've finished our agenda. We stand adjourned.
Sure.
Look up what I want.
Is the meeting over?
Yes, I just adjourned it.
Okay. Thanks you guys very much.
I think we're just gonna hang out here all afternoon.